Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Serious Slander Saturday, your premier AUTZ source for a shit ton of misinformation, a bunch of drunk fucks talking shit, and some content about New Eden. Welcome, I am Kale Eagleseye, FC of Test. With me today, I have lots of people, actually. So look, why don't we start up down the I swear I can English, first language and all that, Australianese apparently. Cool. Would you guys would like to introduce yourself, starting from Captain Soap, and we'll work our way down.
G'day, name's Captain Soben, one of the greatest posters on Reddit, reporting for duty.
One of the two people, or three people, I think, called out by Mitani, the Grand Wizard himself, on INN. Are you back from getting probably pizza and booze yet, Carmen, to introduce yourself? Nope, fair enough. Malachi?
This is working. I just had to set up my push to talk, which is a nightmare on these servers, but I assume it's working. Yeah, nice. Yeah, Malachi, from Van Diemen's Demise, FC every now and then. Probably Carmen's biggest fan.
Minnie?
That's absolutely not true. Like, definitely Darkshines is my biggest fan.
Minnie, you want to introduce yourself,
Obviously. Yeah, it's Minnie. I've FC'd for tons of people. Part-time FC, massive shit talker, the usual.
And Carmen, introduce yourself, buddy.
I don't even need to. I think other people have done a good job of that for me. In fact, it's probably better if other people. It's probably better if other people introduce me for myself. Like they probably give you a more rounded and reasonable fucking introduction.
Best bloke Carmen in the channel. Carmen, the wannabe FC for Inet, the shit tier FC for Test.
Military director for Test, the person who will bash every single Citadel by 2025. Enthusiast and pizza connoisseur.
And then quit.
Yeah, apparently I'm like really bad or something. That's why all the FC's like scared of fighting me. I don't know how it works.
Now, hang on. Serious question. You talk about being a pizza connoisseur. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No, absolutely fucking not.
Yeah, no, he's trash. So today's topics, which we probably will touch on and then never touch on again, Fraternity's failed rote eviction Pochvan, how healthy is EvE currently, and NC.FC's where are they now? That one I added just for you, Malachi. So welcome to Serious Slander Saturday. Let's take the floor. Where do we want to start, guys? Don't all speak up at once.
Just top of your list.
Well, I guess I'd say the hot topic right now is the current drama llama with CCP with the current state of the game, maybe.
I thought we were going to go with your 6 hours in initiative.
Yeah, so.
Oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it? Hey, here's Cryo.
Hey, Cryo. Joining us is Cryo Huron. Introduce yourself, buddy.
Hello, I'm Cryo Huron. I'm the Director of Propaganda and Head of Reddit Swarm of the Imperium.
Reddit Swarm didn't exist, mate. I thought it was all just to tweak Antar's nose.
Wouldn't you like to know, Weather Boy?
It is great to see you, Crying Huron. I'm glad you're here.
So, I just had to get my Uber Eats. I'm sorry.
Oh, what's on the menu tonight, man?
It is a local place called Better Burger. I got a chocolate milkshake, loaded fries, which have their cheese and burger sauce, and a cheeseburger.
We've actually got one of those in Queensland. Well, when I was living in Queensland, there was a place called Better Burger in Queensland that used to do the same stuff. It's kind of like American food, eh?
Yeah, it's really similar to what's the one in LA? The one that does the animal style. Yeah, it's like basically all the same.
Pulled pork burgers and fries.
Is it In-N-Out burger in LA?
Yeah, it's almost identical to In-N-Out. It just like uses actual food standards because America is a whole.
Yeah.
Shit, man, you're making me hungry. It's only fucking 9 a.m.
Yeah. You know the saddest part about this is like I've been to like America a bunch of times and I've always been somewhat impressed by the quality of the food there. Like everyone's like decent restaurants and stuff, but like, the food there's like actually decent, Like, it's certainly not like as bad as like a lot of people would make out. I would say, based on
I've heard
my own personal experiences.
portion. I've heard the portion sizes there are like heroic.
Yeah, they're like giga, man. It's like you can feel like 4 people for like what you bought for like 1 salad.
It's what you can do when you don't pay your staff, right?
Ooh.
It's like so.
I'm pretty sure it's like more about not paying taxes, right?
Yeah,
It's more about the minimum wage, isn't it?
a mate of mine went over there. He said that their entrees are the size of our mains, and their mains are like 4 of our mains combined. The size,
which makes no fucking sense because, like, your whole country is about like ridiculous excess of just useless shit, right?
What, Australia?
I got a mate of mine who went to the States, and he's just walking down the road, and a random person approached him, going, "Hey, are you Australian?" in my terrible accent, and he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And it's just like, "Oh, it's just the way you walk." Just this laid back, "Oh, everything's fine, mate, should be right," sort of attitude.
Hey, Ryan.
Like this one time, I was like in like I don't know, like I don't even know what the ways of words to describe this shit. It's like a superstore or some shit. Like find some groceries or some shit when I was like in LA, and like the person behind me in the queue, like I'm like paying for my shit. I haven't bought a lot of stuff, right? But the person behind me in the queue, they're like, I gotta chat to the cashier to like pay my bill and that. And like this lady behind me in the queue, like I just hear out of the back of my head, right, like the side of my ear, this lady going like, "Oh my god, you're so English!" And I was like, turn around, and I'm like,
yes, I am.
I don't even like know how to respond to that. Like, what do you say about that? Like, I mean, yeah, I'm an English person. Like, what the fuck do you say to that? Like, how do you?
What you say is,
"She's lovely, what a shag."
Tip top, tally ho, chap.
Toodle pip.
Would you like a cup of tea?
I just sort of looked at her and then turned around again. I was like, I do not want to engage with this.
Alright, well, back to EvE. So, we'll start off with just a bit of story time. So, Sobin, you've had a really interesting experience lately. You left test, joined initiative for a total of 6 hours, and then came back. So, what are you willing to talk about that?
Right, so let's rewind. And in short, I considered my options and thought, hey, let's give these blokes in initiative a shot. There's a bunch of guys that I know who are in tactical supremacy. Many of those I've known for like 8 years plus. They were a lot of the original Australian goons from back in the old days. And I thought, yeah, nothing too serious. Let's give them a go and let's fly with the old boys again. Knowing who I am online, I thought, no, let's double check and get some boxes ticked and lines crossed and all the paperwork done, and that was all done and it was all approved. Yes, you're more than welcome to join. Just keep the shit posting to a minimum. Yeah, no worries. Not like there's a lot to shit post about anyway. But basically, I got home at like midnight. I applied. I got accepted and the boys were happy. Welcome back. And I stumbled off to bed. Woke up at 6 in the morning to a shitload of private messages saying you can't stay. TLDR, someone in Goons heard and said no, he can't be in there. And so I was swiftly told, no, you can't be in there. And so I quickly joined my previous corporate test within 15 minutes. So all in all, I was in the initiative for 6 hours total.
And you slept through all 6 of it.
Correct. I slept through the entire clusterfuck as it was firing in the background.
So you've seen the best bits then?
So unfortunately, I got a message about this going, "Hey, why is Captain Soban blacklisted?" And unfortunately,
did you? I want to hear about this.
Oh, really?
I've just pulled it up again just to double check. Unfortunately, the reason right next to it is
slap it on the stream, lad.
Is Captain Soban. The date's here. Reason Captain Soban.
Yep, I know of this. I've got mates who are in Goons, and basically the reason I was blacklisted is for being Captain
Sobin. But
I mean, to be fair, Mibbles ain't coming back,
Initiative
right?
was
And that's a fairly similar reason.
I thought Initiative was its own alliance, could make its own choices.
Well, that's an interesting point, because my understanding was that Initiative don't follow Goon blacklists. So someone must have pulled some heavy strings to make Initiative follow Goon's rules.
Oh mate, it's almost like magic. You know, like a wizard had a bit of jingle.
Let's not lay on too strong, like it's only like one of the dudes here, right?
Bad posting will get you places.
I mean, like, Minnie, do you like actually know anything about what happened? Like, I don't know if you do or not.
I do, and no comment.
Yeah,
right.
I've been asked by Sobin to obviously keep names and stuff out because he's a good bloke and he doesn't want anyone to be roasted. So we're having a bit of poke and a giggle.
And I'll say this right from the start. Like the guys that I know and the contacts that I have, they did a really, really good job. They're really nice guys. I've spoken to them multiple times, and really, they've said, look, these are the conditions if you want to join. I said, yep, that's totally fine. I'm more than happy to just chill out and be in a zen state. It's Reddit posting. It's okay. It's a bit of, it's a bit of footy sledging on the side. It's not that big of a deal. I can wind that back a bit.
Are you the only Australian that's ever been blacklisted from Init?
Who was blacklisted for a minute? Someone
technically,
no, you can't join.
Technically, I'm not blacklisted for a minute, you could say, but I'm blacklisted from Goons.
You look at the list of Australian retards I've taken.
Is that not all of them?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Like,
that's
you go through
point.
That list, and you're like, oh, damn, man, that's...
I know of certain people that have been accepted for my initiative that have done far worse things.
Like, you're worse
posting.
You're worse than Sword Dragon, right?
Well, I was going to say, I thought Cry would have loved to have had you in his stable for Reddit Swarm, Sobin.
See, that's the point. Like, I sat back and I thought, hang on, that was a PR win. Imagine if Imperium took me in and said, look, the people are jumping ship. We've got Captain Sobin here, ready to join the ranks of the Imperium. It would have been an absolute massive win for their camp. But instead, no, it seems like someone had a bit of a cry.
You would have busted the bank off Reddit Swarm, mate. They wouldn't have been able to pay you out the Plex. You would have bankrupt Goons if you joined.
I don't want to.
I would have. Look, if you want me to post pro Imperium stuff, I'm a fucking pro, mate. Like, I could get right into it.
I don't want to have to know the raising of war bonds.
I'm not sure you could choke Ashing out between your fucking gritted teeth. I can't believe you could do it.
Would it be war bonds or would it be Sobin bonds to be able to pay out his
making an alt court?
Let me give you a real tip here, Sobin, right?
Test is undying.
What you need to do, Sobin, right? Like, you need to be posting under an account of Reddit that is not really anything really that close to what your actual in-game alias is. But somehow these dudes in it, they'll still find out. They'll still find out that it's you, and they'll chat about you all the time in their Discord channels and all that shit. And
that's the thing. You mentioned Init, but Init don't have a problem. They're the ones that don't have an issue. It's the other alliance that is somehow separate to Init that seems to have a problem.
Oh, Army of Mangoes.
That doesn't.
Yeah.
I was making a joke about my own personal situation. Minnie probably knows about it. It's not really so much about you. It's a funny joke I was making that some people might get, but some people might not.
Fulcrum messaged us and said no. Sorry.
Fulcrum, mate. Why are you doing me, bro, Sobin dirty?
me and Sandrin, right? Maybe I shouldn't share this on the show, but me and Sandrin, right? We've got a bet going at the moment. Basically, what the bet is because obviously, like everyone else who's a fucking large alliance, we have spies and chat relays and all this shit, right? Me and Sandrin, we've got a bet going as to at the end of the year, which one of us is going to have more mentions in the Init General channel, by name at the end of the year. I think Sandrin's ahead by a little bit at the moment, but it's pretty close, which is kind of surprising because I haven't really done much for a while. But yeah, so that's our bet. Like, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure, right? That in it, like fucking general channel, like their random LAN members, like they talk about our FCs and test more than our own fucking alliance talks about our own FCs.
If you want to go and find all the
in and out of initiative so quick, I barely had time to even load the fucking Discord server, so I couldn't even check that myself.
Hot tip if you want to find Carmen's in it, Spy.
Just go find it. Where?
Just go find it talking about him in fucking...
It's the one clapping my name fucking constantly in the fucking chat, right?
Nah, you just gotta say pineapple belongs on pizza, and the person who screams the loudest that no it doesn't is probably Carmen.
You can't joke about shit, man. You can't joke about shit, man. It's like, no. That's something like deeply inherently wrong.
Pizza is great. You know what? After the show, I'm gonna go heat up some bacon and pineapple pizza pockets, and I'll send you a photo of me eating them, Carmen.
I'm not gonna judge you, man. I'm an open-minded 2021 millennial.
You know, it could be worse. You could have like strawberries on pizza.
Oh, those dessert pizzas with like, haven't you had a dessert?
Why would you even think about that? Like,
yeah, I've had a good dessert pizza in my time.
You've never had a dessert pizza, Carmen?
Yeah.
So they get like a sweet dough base, and instead of like
just stop
sauce,
talking.
it's
just
Nutella.
Stop talking now. Just stop.
A bit of custard,
Nutella,
bananas and strawberries, a little bit of caster sugar. Powdered sugar on top, man. They're not bad.
I'm pulling up the dessert pizza at my local place. It's a sweet base, and then it's got banana, blueberries, chocolate, white chocolate, and custard.
Right. Have any of you ever had a kebab pizza?
Yes, that's delicious.
Isn't that just a waffle?
Well, I've not had one, right? But I've seen it a couple of times, and I'm like somewhat mildly curious to try it out. But
could be worse.
I've not spoken to anyone that's had one before, apart from apparently Minnie has had one.
I have had one when I was drunk, but
I get the impression they're probably like all right. Like they're probably not like great, you know. Like if you're like really smashed, it's probably okay.
Welcome to Serious Slander Saturday, where fuck Eve, we talk about food.
I mean,
Eve is dog shit. Why would we talk about Eve? There's like nothing to chat about in Eve, right?
We could talk about the Abyssal Siege modules having another bug.
Why don't we chat about the January deployment from Goons? Why don't we chat about the January deployment from Goons? Let's chat about that crowd.
I have no idea what that's about, but I'm not in the military.
Deployment, eh?
Oh, really? Yeah, really? Alright.
That's interesting. I have no idea. For a while.
Where's this supposed deployment gonna end up?
Well, I mean, I heard that Test is next, and, you know, Test is apparently now, but Test is, like, still alive, right? So, I mean, you put 2 and 2 together, right?
What did I miss? Who's
deploying? Well, Test is next. That would imply that they're deploying very close to Test space, surely.
Well, apparently, Goon's coming after us, Malachi.
Who, sorry?
Apparently, where is Test going in January?
I've got some leaks little bit of leaks to spare here, right?
Ooh.
I believe it was it today, or I believe it was yesterday now, depending on, you know, what time zone you're in. I think it was yesterday for most people now. You know, we may have seen some Goonies, some Goonie Goons, moving some stuff into Cuss, and it was you know,
oh my god,
bunch of caps, some dreads, you know, like you know, some moonins and stuff, you know.
Are you saying they're deploying into or out of Curse for like the 15th time in the last 3 months?
I am not saying anything at all. I am just saying that I heard some things that Test was next, and then apparently Test was not next, and then, you know, right now apparently Test is not next, and then, you know, today, you know, we're like seeing some stuff moving into Curse. I'm just chatting shit, dude. I'm just like shit talking. I'm stirring the pot, trying to get people to, like, you know, like build some controversy. That's what I'm trying to do.
So basically, the current policy is Test is eventually.
Test is next decade. Test is next.
Is that like how CO2 works? When, you know, when CO2 was like, you know, on the hit list until you did absolutely nothing ever to them, until something happens to them, and, you know, like bad things happen to them, and then you took credit for it.
Yeah.
Is that like how?
If I recall, I remember fighting that war with CO2, and I recall it was Legacy that did all the work fighting CO2, and then after that it was a disgruntled 2IC that pulled the pin on CO2, and then immediately, within minutes, goons run around parading, saying, "Hey, it was us! It was all us! It was revenge! Oh, if I can see it too."
Look, all I'm going to say on this matter,
yeah, because they had a hate burner from like a year ago.
My official statement on this is you better be really careful about who's got ACL access for those keep stars and out of passage.
What keep stars?
All 2 of them that you have.
Sick. Okay, cool.
I do enjoy the fact that you have like official like Goon Swarm political speak. Like, you know, there's a social stream. It's all right. You can let your hair down. Just have a bit of a chit chat.
It's okay.
Mittens
is hold up,
breathing
right?
over your shoulder. It's all right. You can talk freely. Like swear. Like blink twice.
This comment about like, you know, you gotta be careful who's got ACL to those keep stars, right?
You never know who the black hand's gonna flip.
Am I supposed to be scared by that? Like, in any reasonable, meaningful way? Like, at all?
You never know who's going to pull a judge. It might be Kale.
Carmen, we all know you're not smart enough to be scared of anything.
And I know Kale barely holds the ability to pull plugs. He's barely smart enough to be FC.
I mean, on the one hand, I think that's like completely idiotic for you to even make that kind of comment, right? Because there's obviously like not going to be any kind of real threat, right? But like, secondly, I don't even have fucking access to change those ACLs, right? Like, the fuck, dude? Like, come on!
Look, it's going to go back to my long-term theory in that Villy is the greatest.
Put some fucking money down on this bet. If you want to like make some threats and be like, oh yes, we're going to flip your fucking keep stars, right? Put some money down. Let's go on then, man.
Look, it's going to be a case of Villy being the greatest double triple agent of all time.
I've got
is this some like Q-Goon level conspiracy theory right here? Like, Billy is somehow double agent.
I think what's really going to happen is a lot of crying, and then like, oh wait, you know what? We never said Tess was next. Yeah, no, we didn't. We never said that.
I can validate Cryo's theory. Billy was spotted in a original Sinners fleet a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Oh, in Pochman.
Weird.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, I've explained what is next means multiple times, but it doesn't seem to sink in, so I'm just, why should I explain it again?
It's amazing that you think at this point Villy still has roles to anything in the entire alliance. Like, I'm absolutely fucking flabbergasted that you think that is true.
I did not pay attention to half that sentence. Could you repeat it?
I think that it's absolutely astonishing that any of you think that Villy has roles left to anything in Test at all, like for anything.
You never know, he might. It could be a long game here. We're playing the long game, Carmen.
Yeah, and now you just shot yourself in the foot implying that Villy's like some sort of double agent, so he's definitely not getting rolled anytime soon.
Villy like voluntarily like left everything. Like he on his own like removed himself from everything, as far as I'm aware.
Which is free to do. You know, you fight one of the largest wars in the game, and you want to have a break from that. That's your call. You know, play his game.
That's like his fucking thing to deal with, right? But like, this concept that he's like going to be some kind of like a double fucking agent is like ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
You're sitting there saying, "Oh, he was in some other fleet. Oh, it's a conspiracy." Yeah, but in Test, we don't get over ourselves on what individual people do with their time in game. If they want to join a, MPSI fleet, if they want to join another fleet separately and shoot some dudes, that's their call. Like there's no real big conspiracy around playing the game.
That's absolutely true. In certainly some aspects I've seen that to be true. And just off the back of that mini, by the way, can I guess FC fit in it a little bit?
We have standards, so no.
That's really mean.
No,
I want a second opinion.
Carmen,
sure, you can ask Giants and he'll be even less impressed.
I'll send Shines a message right now. Hold on. I haven't messaged him since the war ends, but I'll ask. Hold on.
I'm really interested to see what his reply is.
I've got to craft this really carefully.
I would love for
you got to craft it very carefully just in case Matani reads the message.
Oh, Matani's got a secret backdoor double triple access to all of our discords. He sees what we type.
I don't think that Matani is actually
me in the slightest because he did learn of me joining in it within 30 minutes. So I
don't think Matani has spoken about me at all during the last 18 months straight. So if I can avoid that, I'm totally fucking okay with that.
I can make it happen if you want. I can.
No, please don't. Like, I don't. No, I don't want any part of that, dude.
Just send him a note. Hold on.
I'll just ask Shines on the next fleet and see what he says.
Tell him like the next strat up he goes on, I'll backseat him. I'll teach him some things, you know.
Oh, look, we already have our monitor limit. Very strict.
Look, I would have won the the EvE Down Under tournament if I was allowed to fly a monitor.
I remember like one of these fights we had in like fucking it was like 1DQ or T5 or some shit, and like we were like we were like extracting in T5, and there was an inner fleet that come through, and like they didn't like it was Shines FC, right, and he did not shoot anyone from my entire fleet. He could have killed like 10, 15, 20 hacks probably because he had no logi and everything. But he was like, he just shot like my monitor, like straight up for like the whole fucking time. He was like, no, I'm gonna fucking kill you, Cameron. I'm gonna fucking straight up kill you.
In tie-dye?
Yeah, it was like massive tie-dye, right? And he killed my monitor, right? And I was in like a high grade fucking snake pod, and he like wouldn't pod me because he didn't want me to reship so quickly. And like some dude from my fleet like brought me like warped a shuttle over to me. I got in the shuttle, like he ejected from the shuttle right next to me. And I got in the shuttle and fucking warped back to the Keepstar and got a new monitor. Like he saved me like a 3-bill pod or some shit just because he refused to fucking let me reship so quick.
That is quite funny.
I mean, it's ESC, right? Who gives a shit about ESC anymore?
Well, certain people do because, dreads cost 9 billion ESC now.
Which is a bit fucked, in my opinion.
And that's a perfect segue onto our next topic. Right, Cal?
Yeah, sure.
If caps don't cost nothing and you ain't scared about fucking paying money, come fight us on our Keepstars, bruh. I heard the test was next, so where you at? Let's go.
Test is definitely next. I'm on that train.
I'm waiting for a cloud of titans to land just outside of stage Keepstar.
I'm just waiting for Internet to offer to work with NC on it.
Just quickly. Alright, yay! Alright, cool. I kind of fixed the widget, guys, so you can now actually see who's speaking.
I'm just waiting for like this big cloud of titans that is like, the omnipotent, the threat, the omnipresent threat. And it's like, well, where is it? Like, it's been hanging over our heads apparently for a while, but like, like where actually is it, right?
I don't think due to scarcity, there's enough fuel left in the game after our move home for them to actually move up and forward.
I mean, you're well cool to like, go chat to. You're well okay with like going shooting some Keepstars like we don't really give a fuck about, right? But like, the ones we actually like care about, that like in our hood. Where's a fight at, right? I thought Tess was next, and then you've got like 1,000 titans or some shit.
No, that requires them to move titans as supers offensively, not on a friendly Keepstar. That is way too spooky for them.
Implying you need Keepstars to move.
Their entire doctrine is to sit on a Keepstar in tether and just throw fighters out.
I mean, I'm just saying, right? I heard Tess was next, and like you'll seem like real keen to like go and shoot our shit, right? And then
swear I can barely
shockingly, like no one's there anymore. It's like there's been like a line that someone drew in the sand, and it's certainly one
like actually shut the fuck up and let me give a response for once in your goddamn life.
Woo, fucking lad.
Jesus Christ! It's been like 4 weeks of you constantly fucking talking. Let someone else have a word in.
I think you wound him up now, Carmen.
It's alright, mate. It's okay. It's a very chill stream.
It's been,
right,
what, a year and a half since the war started? 18 months? And ended 18 months. It's been 18 months, and still somehow you idiots think that we want to operate on your timescale, that we have to jump when you say jump. It doesn't work like that. Stop trying to make us do shit on your timescale when you want stuff done.
Is that not literally how you worked during the war? You were like, wait, why did you attack Q? Why did you attack Q? Like, you're literally like, it's the exact same propaganda, but when it's like flipped on its head and like somehow you're the recipient of it, you're like really upset about it. No. Shocking.
See, like, to be fair,
almost it was you chatting shit. That's almost like what it was.
I like how both of you are still trying to talk over each other. Like, Jesus Christ.
You guys have set the objective, right? You're like, your leader has sat there and said test is next.
Yeah. Define next.
Next on the firing board.
Define next.
So
do it for me right now. Define next.
So any time from now until the day EvE dies.
So what you're trying to say, Cryo, and this is just from what I'm getting, is test is next, but it doesn't necessarily mean right now. It's you're going to hit us before you hit anyone else in New Eden. Is that what you're trying to?
Except try. Just tries first, right? Because try is next.
Well, it's like what we were saying. Test is next, but Brave is first. Test is next, but tries first.
But try is first.
Test is always next.
So try is first, and then Brave is next, and then Test is like what?
Hang on. I thought Brave was first because I remember at the time where Brave was the target number one.
Look, we came to the conclusion that if we deployed against Brave, it'd be like clubbing a baby seal, and that's close to war crime. What's wrong with that? It's like war crimes. I want to do war crimes.
I mean, it's something that Goons are used to doing, so...
When I mentioned that
and that's somehow different to you deploying against Triumvirate, where you're outnumbering them 700 to 200 and still going 50-50 on BRs.
Skill issue.
No, you're fucking right. That is a skill issue. If you're outnumbering someone 700 or 200 and you're going 50-50, that is absolutely
common. I've never said we're good at the game. I've never said we're good at this game. We are awful at this game, and somehow won the war.
See, here we go. We're going back to backpedaling to, we're so bad at this game. It's a standard.
It's consistent messaging, Soban. You would know, arguing with me on Reddit for 18 months. My messaging was always consistent.
I mean, they kind of are, right? I mean, the most saddening part about this, right, is the fact that, Goons generally have this messaging where, we're so bad at this game, but, I mean, they definitely were, right? But, there's definitely a bunch of, people in Goons who are not anymore, but they still get, basically, down fucking steps by, people, fucking chatting about them, right? There was, a bunch of shit FCs, Goons are mostly shit FCs, right, for the most part of the war, and some of them got really fucking good. There's a good bunch of them got really fucking good, and, even now, they're still, really fucking good, right? And then everyone's now, oh yeah, no, we're really bad. It's it's disrespectful to them,
Is it? Or do you just see it from the outside? Because,
Well, I mean, a lot of those guys are taking breaks, right? And
maybe it's part of your internal culture, right? Where it's a joke or a meme or something like that. But it's at some point, after you make that joke a lot of times, right? It kind of becomes a little bit too much sometimes, right? And genuinely from the outside, Goons have got some pretty good FCs nowadays. I mean, certainly some of them won at the start of the war, but they grew and learned and became good. And for you to say oh yeah, I know you're not saying them individually particularly are bad, right? But to go just blanket be oh yeah, we're bad. It's kind of there's a bad feeling in your mouth. Right?
The comparison I want to use would get this stream taken down by the Twitch police. It's
spawn bombing.
All blanks are bastard.
Is it interesting? The only response you have is something that involves, breaking TOS on Twitch.
No,
you don't have any other way to describe the situation.
We drop C-bombs. We're affiliated. We're not partnered. So Redline's we can get.
I can confirm. I am a bad FC. Come fight me, please. I need content.
I'll fight you.
I'm so fucking bad at this game. Please fight us, Goons. Please. I need the content. You keep saying test is next. Please, we need the content. We're dying here.
Hey, I took a fleet in a Porchfin the other night. We died in a fire. We tried to hop into third party the fraternity versus Rote. Their failed eviction off the their forters are in
I'm still logged off in that system.
Should we ask Kale and Carmen this question?
What's the one from the chat?
Oh, the one that's going to set Carmen off on a rant for 30 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, we'll save that one for the end when I want to go, make some dinner and not actually concentrate on the show.
Well, I would be interested to hear what other people on the show actually have to say about this, because it's an interesting question. It's obviously a very topical question with a lot of varied opinions about it.
What's the question?
Oh yeah, look, just quickly.
Someone read out.
Hang on, just quickly. So this show is an open forum to anyone who would like to come on and talk shit. This isn't just a test show or a pappy show, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. The pappy's dead old man, get with the times. We've Cryo and Luke's my co-host. He's not here at the moment. He's got some real life stuff going on, and Cryo's a goon.
He doesn't have real life stuff. He's playing Stellaris.
Yeah, I know he's. I'm trying to be nice and not throw him under the bus.
Pretty much half the show at the moment is people who are not from. It's the Imperium people, minis from in it, and Cryo's some goons and stuff. there's a few dudes from like Test or NC or Peppy or some stuff. But if you're in the chat and you just like want to jump on the show and come and chat to us, like just do it.
Yeah, it's all in the about section.
No one's going to stop
the group the better.
I think we need to buff the Zealot and nerf the Munin. Discuss.
I agree. Straight up, it's just flat.
We need to go back to old school alpha doctrines in battleships.
Hang on. Let's hear Malachi out. How like you said, you know how to do it. Let's.
I know exactly. Tell me, and this is the ultimate question, right? Is this genius or retarded? And that's all I want to hear.
There's a thin line there, but yeah, go on.
Yes,
very thin line.
Flip the coin.
Is this genius or retarded, right? If you wanted to make Zealots great and Munins shit, here's a fantastic way to do it. Make web bubbles only apply to micro warp drives.
That's actually quite a good idea, I think.
Genius or retarded?
So it could be like an EMP burst kind of situation where it just fucks with
it's not about webs, right? It only fucks with MWDs. It means...
Well, that's already how it works, right?
No, like it penalizes afterburning, right?
The way the web bubbles already work, you're talking about the dicta web bubbles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way they work already is that like they are not a persistent effect that is existing in space for the duration of the time the bubble is there. It is an effect that is applied to everything that is in range at the time the bubble is popped.
Yep.
So in a lot of ways, right? There's no real reason why that couldn't be like applying to MWDs and
only
like a scram. There's no reason it can be a scram bubble but turn MWDs on.
You don't have it as a permanent bubble on micro warp drive capable ships.
You don't want to turn the MWD off. It's way too overpowered. But if it was the same, like it cuts the effectiveness of an MWD by 40%. Right? Yeah, I get the idea, but it's a real simple thing, and it shakes right up, right? It makes brawling fucking great again.
It forces all the ships to slow the fuck down and gets brawling back into the
game. I'm not going to pretend I know how the game works, right? But like, I would presume that it's very, very difficult to know why when a ship is going at certain speeds, is it because it's MWD or whatever, right? Like to say like, oh, you only get webbed if you got MWD on, kind of thing. Maybe it's like fair to do. Maybe that's like reasonable. I
would assume it's still only a call to your client, right? So when you shoot something, you've got to check and see what the speed is to figure out what you're tracking on.
Yeah, but it's EVE, right? Like, you have no idea how.
But if
anything could be like dumb shit, EVE, right?
If you cancel if you cancel any idea because
the idea of it roughly makes sense to me, right? Like one of the things I had actually the most issues with about the web bubbles is that they like drastically penalize AB doctrines massively more than any other doctrines for MWDs, right?
Yeah, and that's the point of that idea, right? Is to impact MWDs, let people AB. It changes the dynamics of if you want to fight on gates, you might be better off in an AB doctrine rather than getting,
I had a long chat with Pando about this actually when the web bubbles come out, right? And it was like the web bubbles don't even really affect MWD doctrines like that much, really. Like because by the time your speed is actually slowed down to the amount that the negative bonus is affecting you, you'll basically have coasted out of the bubble already because you're just going that fucking fast from the MWD.
But I'm thinking of the fights at scale, right? Where you're going. That's fair enough. Like in a 50v50 where you shoot the thing and it disappears and you never get web bubbled again. But when you're talking about 1,000 versus 1,000, right, it becomes a serious hindrance. Yeah,
but I mean, you've been in that scale of fight, right? When you get bubbled as your fleet gets bubbled by Dixons, right? It seems very unlikely that you're going to get your entire fleet, or at least even most of it, hit by even 2 bubbles in a row, right? The first bubble is going to hit you, and it's going to be like your speed is going to be reduced by whatever it's like 30% or some shit is, I think, for like the web bubbles. And then by the time your speed's actually slowed down to what that minus 30% is, because it happens iteratively, you don't like it doesn't go like 0 to minus 70, whatever the fuck, right?
But it wrecks AB comps, right?
Yeah, but that's the point I'm making, right? Is that with MWDs, because you're going so fast, by the time you even slow down to that minus 30%, like your ship has already travelled outside the bubble, and then you're just like, it almost doesn't matter.
But take the like if it only applied to MWDs and you say increase it to 50%, like it gives you way more balance control about something that impacts the battlefield. That
I think it's definitely a massively better way of dealing with it.
there's changing the balance between brawling and kiting, and then these silly things that sit at max range, 200 kilometers. Like the game needs to figure out any way to make it more dynamic, I think, and that's like rather than having something that's blanket on and off, anything you can do to make it more dynamic, I think is better. It's kind of like the MJD thing where it was like it applies to everyone, but as soon as you make it apply to only 25, it becomes a much more dynamic battlefield because it adds a bit of chaos.
Yeah, and the thing as well is that like AB comps have like not been, I wouldn't want to say good, but like they've not been popular for like a long time, and Wobbles basically disproportionately damaged them because it just makes them massively more worse. Even more worse is not really like a term, right? But the whole point of like AB doctrines is that your speed to sig ratio is pretty good, but then when you just get webbed your whole fucking fleet, then
so what do they nerf the skirmish link, right? And then so they all already became vulnerable, and then you chuck that web bubble on top, and it's just
like web bubbles are like massively damaging to AB comps overall, and they don't really do very much at all to MWDs because of the aforementioned facts that we discussed, where by the time you actually get finished with enough that you've already coasted out of the bubble. And I think that's probably the main point of it, was enough MWD shit, right? So yeah, how it currently is pretty bad. It's probably not really achieving its design goal. And the thing that you had discussed about making it only apply to MWDs, probably a good idea, I think.
It would be interesting.
Genius, I'll take
it. No, it wasn't voted shit, Malachi, so take the W.
Can we go back to the question that was in the chat earlier, which I think we missed it.
Which one?
Oh, there's one about supers, I believe. Let me check the chat here now real quick.
Well, I just got caught up on the bullshit with fucking Abyssal Siege modules at the moment. What the hell?
Oh no, I missed it. It was just about hack better. But yeah, that's the question about can we fix hack meta. It's a much broader question that is probably going to take like hours of conversation. It's a huge issue.
That one should just be an entire show on and by itself.
Right. I've got another genius solution for you, Carmen.
Go for it.
This is my theory on how to fix all the balance in EvE. Is you want to do stuff that adds more skill into the game, right? At the moment, it's everything's very much just anchor up F1.
I've got no skill in the game, so I don't want that.
Yeah, I know, right? But which makes it a very static meta, because the only way to balance that then is, can I alpha kill the other ship? Yes, no.
Removing anchoring would just go back to the 2010 meta of alternate 200.
Don't preempt what I'm going to say.
Let him talk.
Right?
Let him talk.
What's the one thing on your spaceship that would drive a much higher skill level, but is generally irrelevant?
Hotkeys.
Overheating.
Nope.
Probably some form of manual piloting.
It's right in the middle of your thing, right? You've got capacitor, and it is 99% irrelevant in this game.
I mean, outside
pretty much the way your ships work is that you're either cap stable or you're not, and
Yeah, and if you want to be cap stable, would you fit a small cap booster on an Eagle, right? Like, now, if you change that dynamic where it's really difficult to be cap stable, but you might have cap for 4 or 5 minutes, right? But the longer these fights go on, the less anchored up you are, the more spread your DPS is. I think there's a massive opportunity there to actually make capacitor matter. If you want to fit cap boosters at gimps, you fit in some other way, etc. I think that's a real, because then it comes down to your skill at managing your cap. It matters.
I think that what you're talking about comes down to basically a different problem to what you're talking about.
Everyone will just start flying Mimitar ships, which they're already doing now.
But then you make it so their cap, say, if you're micro warp driving, your cap runs out faster or something, right? Like it actually, because at the moment it's just cap's pointless, right? So you then get this other dynamic that you can balance with. So sure, your guns don't take cap, but you might run out of cap 3 minutes before, 2 minutes before the other guy. You've got to learn how to pulse your MWDs. Yes, you can F1 anchor up, but after 20 minutes of fighting, right, your fleet's got all kinds of problems, and you're trying to make brawling stronger.
To be fair, I know all about capacitor because I fly Amar Dreads.
See, what you need to do, right, and this will just fix the game for everybody, is you make it so that way, like drones, you can assign your guns to a ship, like assist your guns. Now you just assist it to the FC, he presses a button and he kills everything. Just takes the pilots
Basically,
out of the game.
hang on. So you're basically asking for the original Sentry drone doctrine from 2014.
But with guns. But with guns, you know,
Same
you just
thing.
get your line members to assist you, sign your guns to the FC, let the FC do all the work. You can sit.
See, I remember back in the day, back in 2014, we'd fly the old dummy and F-star doctrines and goons, and we'd throw our sentries out and we'd assist the FC. And I'd walked away from the computer for half an hour. I went and got some errands done. And I got home, well, not home, PC, same thing. I got back to the computer. We're all done. I got 30 kills. Sweet.
Yeah, basically. I remember those times too.
All right, hold up, right? There's a question in chat saying, at Carmen, how about web bubbles also increase your, signature radius by a % factor? I mean, that ain't going to change nothing. In fact, it's even going to exacerbate the issues because, web bubbles, basically are very effective against increasing application against, afterburner doctrines. And the way that afterburner doctrines mitigate damage is to have, the afterburner speed versus a small sig ratio, right? So they're trying to have a high speed to a low sig. So if you have the web bubble, which reduces their speed, but then also increases their sig, which they doesn't currently, it's just going to even more damage AB doctrines, pretty much. So it's not really a great idea.
It essentially is increasing the sig by slowing the ship down, right?
Well, yeah, but if you also then, add an additional bonus to increase the sig, it's just making it even fucking worse, right?
Just make the web stronger rather than have it affect two things.
Oh, yeah, possibly. I mean, honestly, the web bubbles are, decent. They're not as strong as people think they are. I mean, they're only, I think, only 30% web or something like that. It's not insane.
I think the point with web bubbles, though, is that they just kill afterburner doctrines.
Pretty much.
Which kills brawling doctrines if they only applied to this is my logic, right? But if it only applied to MWDs, brawling gets stronger relative. Zealots get stronger relative to Munins because Munins rely on speed and MWD. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, but thank you for reminding me actually about the topic you were chatting about earlier, because that's what I want to get back to. This idea that cap stability in ships, right? I think that's honestly mostly an issue to do with fitting of ships and kind of what are the dominant fits and what is able to be fitted and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the issues with what people consider to be the hack meta can be solved with basically changing fitting and hull bonuses for the most part for a very small amount of hulls, which are what people consider to be the issue with hack meta, right? When people say hack meta, what they effectively are talking about, and anyone here, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this. People are basically talking about Moonins and Eagles and Cerberuses. And I don't really feel like anyone has any significant problems with other hack holes apart from those three, broadly. If I'm wrong on that and you have some issues on that, speak up now.
No, I think you generally...
I did really enjoy flying Serbs back in the day. They were a lot of fun. Just saying.
And I think that's a good point.
The predominant...
Just 2 seconds.
Go ahead, yeah.
So that, Serbs back in the day were fun, and I think what I've been thinking about is when you talk about changing hull bonuses or fitting, you kind of, and I know the suggestion I had on the capacitor is similar, but you just end up with something else becomes the dominant. Because if you're only changing those hull bonuses, something else becomes the optimal alpha-ring platform, something else becomes the optimal kiting platform. And I guess it's the same with capacitor as well, right? But you need to do something that brings player skill into the game rather than what's the new doctrine that we put 200 players in.
I think that's a different problem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, balancing hacks and sort of beginning to reduce the strengths of hacks that are very strong is certainly one thing that's, I would say, relatively straightforward to do. And we can, I got some ideas on that. We can talk about that if you want to. But the second thing you're talking about is, how do you bring player skill into flying the ships, right? And like that's genuinely a very fucking difficult thing to do, based on just even the basic mechanics of how the game works in EvE. I would say
capacitors are right there, ready, waiting for it.
There are so many things in a game which are innately, I wouldn't want to say like designed to be conducive to, like building that like meta of like having an FC, having a little anchor on the FC, or that kind of thing, right? But it's very difficult to get away from that.
You just want to make it more. I think you want to make it more awkward, right?
You can make it more awkward, right?
And you can anchored to FC has been a thing since like 2012, 2008. It's a well ingrained sort of mechanic in the game now.
Yeah, and
I've long said that you can remove that, right? That is a thing that could be removed from the game, right? We can CCP can if they choose to, which I'm certain they won't ever consider. But they could, if they wanted to, functionally remove anchoring from the game. They could reduce the max fleet size cap from 256 down to 70 or 56 or something, right? Like there are many things they could do which would fundamentally massively change how fleet fights work. But the thing is, like, it's going to take a huge amount of it's incredibly difficult to understand what are like the real ramifications of what that would change, and maybe it would do a lot of stuff that we want, and maybe it would change a lot of things that we want for the better, right? But it also might change a lot of stuff really negatively, and we just don't know.
So here's a good question. Here's kind of where I'm looking at EvE at the moment. So when you talk about like balance by changing ship bonuses and all the rest of it, we've done that to death, right? We've been through the evolution of every, like, lots of different ships being the apex ship. And the question is, for me, is it time to do something to find a different way to balance ships? Or
maybe.
Do you just walk, like for me, do you just walk away from the game because you go, well, if it's just going to be another iteration of, oh, this one's getting a 5% bonus to alpha damage and this one's getting a 10% bonus to rate of fire, and they switch positions. The game's been balanced that way for so long, and the meta just ends up being the meta, right? And I guess that's the question. If you go back a higher level in the game design, is what's the right way to balance?
I kind of see where you're going with this, but I also kind of disagree in a lot of ways with what you're saying.
I'm not saying I'm 100%. I agree with you about about that. Like, there's something in that idea, but I don't know what the proper execution of that idea is. But I think
there's certainly some value in that idea, but it's like how do we like work that out is certainly a question to be worked out, right? But like one of the things I would want to like posit as a counterpoint to like this idea that the hacker meta is like really bad, I think the hacker meta is actually really good, and I've got some reasoning why that I would like to share with people, right? I mean, Malachi, you especially, Mini as well. You've been around for a long time. You've seen, how the meta of subcat fights have worked in the game probably a lot longer than I have, right? You both have been FCs, major FCs, and way longer than I have, right? But before hacks, it was pretty much like battle cruisers and battleships, right? And it was like there was always like one or two or three things that were just really good, right? And it was pretty much like the predominant meta, and we are almost always, I believe, going to end up finding some kind of, I believe the correct term is the degenerative strategy of like just what is like the min-max best thing in the game, right? And certainly for a long time that was true, with like, battleships and battle cruisers and that kind of thing, right? There's really no battle cruisers that were ever used effectively or for any real reason except Feroxes and Hurricanes, right? And Feroxes were used for their, basically just base stats and ISK effectiveness for the most part. They were just really good at everything and really cheap. And Hurricanes were used as, just absolutely throwaway cheap alpha platforms to trade effectively, right? And, where we've landed at now in the, air quote, hack meta, there's actually quite a lot of options of taking fights with different varieties of hack fleets, right? And it actually has a relatively decent, like rock paper scissors kind of like meta game to it, right? And it's not just like 2 or 3 fleet comps to it. There's actually like like 4 or 5 or 6 are actually pretty decent.
But is it rock scissors paper when you know what the other side's undocking before they undock?
Well, there's no way to get away from that really in this game, I don't think.
But it's not really one thing fits all apart from the Munin, because the Munin can do everything. Like
it can't though.
But you say there's
definitely there are certainly things that the Munins fight against that they lose to, right? Like pretty good. Yeah, like Feroxes. Feroxes like straight up like just beat Munins.
Yeah, but like then you just bring bombers. Like you're not in a meta where you can just bring Feroxes to fight Munins right now. It just doesn't.
Right, but also like that's situational, right? You can't bomb someone on a fort, for example, right? And like if you're defending fort, you're fighting at range. Eagles beat Munins at range. Eagles are really good against Munins at range. Like in close range, different story, but at range, Eagles absolutely murder Munins, right? And then
how about if you?
We're beginning to get into what I was trying to say is that there is a certain amount of rock paper scissors around this, and like some things work in some situations, some things work in other situations, and a matchup that works in one situation really well for one side suddenly in a different situation doesn't work at all, and it's like completely favored to the other side in a different situation.
I've got to cut in real quick, guys. Alright, so for those of you who are watching the stream, I've gotten a bunch of messages about ads popping up. This isn't on my end, this is on Twitch's end. I'm currently trying to work out what the problem is. I've also messaged Redline, but he's in the US, so he's probably asleep at the moment. So I really do apologize. This isn't me doing it. I don't gain any monetary value from this. Like, this all goes to New Eden Post. It's not coming from our end, it is Twitch. So I apologize. I know about it. I'm trying to fix it.
Just
continue
more of America profiteering off Australia.
Yeah.
I think Minnie had a point to make here, right?
You go first, Minnie, if you've got a point.
Yeah, I mean, like, there isn't a way to fix this, right? The way that CCP is still doing things, I just don't think there is a way to fix it. There's always going to be a meta that people follow. There is always going to be, the norm of ships, and it's been like that for years and years. Like, I've been playing since beta, and there just has always been that kind of thing. Like, whether it was Drake's early fucking like 2007, or nano cruisers, or sniper battleships, you are always going to have that meta, and everybody will follow it.
I got a point to make, but go ahead, Micah.
I was just going to say on that point of rock, scissors, paper, is you still got to remember that in real life there is actually an element of skill to rock, scissors, paper. There's a strategy.
There is in EvE too.
Yeah, and I think that and what Minnie's saying is right, is that there's always an apex doctrine, right, that just kind of reduces the meta down to 2 or 3 ship comps being the standout, because they have a bit of a counter, but they've got enough versatility to be useful in enough scenarios for what you might find yourself in. And whether it's capacitor or something else, is you just need to figure a way to bring more player skill into the game, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that will set it apart. Because once it's player skill based, you don't necessarily care so much about always flying the same ship, because it comes down to me having more influence on what my ship's doing than lock, shoot, lock, shoot, lock, shoot. That's what to me that's what the game needs to figure out. It's either rebalance again to the next till Drake's become the thing again, or figure out that way to make the game more engaging to play.
So there's 2 points to make here, I think, right? And I'm be honest, right? I've had a late night. I'm trying to remember exactly what these 2 points are, right? like the first point the Mini was making, as I understand it, was that that there's always going to be like one Apex doctrine, one Apex like ship type that's just going to be like really good, pretty much. Is that the point you were making earlier, Mini?
Yeah, like no matter how much we change, there are more fucked up things at the moment than the current meta of ships like Citadels.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I would tend to generally agree with that. But what I would say is that, based on at least my understanding of like, the history of the game and the history of like, the subcap doctrine meta in the game for a number of years previously, it feels like to me, there are many more options now than there ever were before. And they have much more interesting interplay between the options than ever was there before between all of the things which were considered to be viable options.
I would caveat that with pre and post skill points.
Well, sure. I think skill points matter so much, right?
Pre skill points, there was much more diversity in the meta because Drakes in 2007 were mostly because you could count on the fact that everyone could fly it, because then you get other groups who have more experience, could have been flying sleeps, blah, blah, blah. Once you normalized everything with skill points, you drastically reduced the scope of variation in the meta as well.
I think that skill point, I mean, you're talking about skill injectors, right?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some component of that was involved in this, but honestly, like, I don't think that it was like a huge deal at all. I think that it was much more prevalent and involved in many other aspects of the game that was not really PvP. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe there's some stats out there that tell me I'm wrong, but I think that it's really naive. I think to think that there's never going to be a situation where there is not like some fleet concept or fleet composition that's just better than a lot of other stuff, right? It might be better by a lot, and it might be better by a little bit. And what I think that we should strive to get towards is that there are many, many different options we can use, which have an interesting interplay between them. And the dominant strategy, or the degenerative strategy, which is like the dominant fleet comp to use, should be just not that much better than anything else, I think that's totally achievable by doing iterative balance passes and just like paying attention and trying. But the second point of kind of what you were going to, right, is related to effectively logi, I would say. I mean, I kind of forget the point you were actually making, but I knew the point I was trying to get to about it. I'm like, it was about Moonins. That was what it was, right? It was about Moonins. And you were sort of trying to say that, maybe you weren't trying to say this, but this is what I understood. Moonins are so good. They've been nerfed so many times, right? But like the things that Moonins are really good at are a representation of what the game mechanics as a basis effectively they promote those things, that if those things are good in your ship, then that ship will be good. And a really good example of this, right, is alpha, right? So like the concept of alpha being really good for fleet fights. It's been around for a long time, obviously. I mean, yourself, Malachi, Mini, both of you have been around much longer than me, right? I mean, alpha's basically always been king in big fleet fights, right? Is that right? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. There is a certain point, like when you're brawling. Back when you were brawling comps with AB Zealots were more prevalent, DPS did have a bigger part to play, but yeah.
Right. Okay, but it's like broadly true now. You would say, like, obviously, like some caveats, but it's mostly true now, right?
Yeah, 90% alpha's king.
Yeah, and like, if you go and like look at the game, it's immediately very obvious why alpha is like so important in these big fights, right? And it's literally due to the mechanics of the game and how the stats are built for the ships, right? So the way that ships are built in EvE and the way that ships effectively interact with logi, ships in EvE broadly have relatively low base HP, but they have a lot of resistances. right?
The solution.
So that their effective HP is very high because it's a low amount of base HP, but with a lot of resistances. And then when they receive like remote reps, the reps apply to the base HP before resistances. So the more resistances you have, the more effective reps you are receiving because you get reps onto your base HP, and then when you get shot, the shots go through the resistances, right? And like because of this specific, it's not even a mechanic, I'd say. It's just a balance of values, right? Whereby the base HP is really low and the resistances are really high. You know, the incoming reps are multiplied massively, and like we have like really strong reps, right? And that is how we have this concept in a game where like you catch reps. Like either you're gonna die or you catch reps, and if you are catching reps and you're being repaired, then you're probably not gonna die because the effective amount of HP that you are being repaired when you're being repped via the multiplier of resistances is fucking insane versus the incoming damage. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Someone put the brackets in the wrong place in the equation, right?
It's not even someone put the brackets in the wrong place, right? It is by design. It is supposed to be like this. Someone designed it to be like this, right? And that is why Alpha is so dominant as a strategy in fleet fights, right? Is because if someone catches reps, you can't really kill them by providing more DPS to them because you like even a small amount of ships that are Logi can provide reps that are massively outscaling what your incoming DPS is, right?
But even if that wasn't the case, Alpha's still king, right? As long as you can Alpha, as long as your fleet size and the comp you're using is the right size to one-shot the opposition, that's always the optimal solution, no matter what the...
But if you can one-shot them, right? And that's kind of like the point I'm getting to as a massive counterpoint, which is, I don't think we should do this with EvE, right? But it's a counterpoint. It's interesting to see the other side of the equation, right?
Well, we've got
if ships had enormous base HP but really low resistances, then you wouldn't really be able to alpha them because you'd have massive base HP.
There's a mechanic in the game that already does it.
But I mean,
what is that? What is that mechanic, Nico?
But you know, like fighters, you can't alpha a fighter, right? Its health is broken up into 12 chunks that you have to damage and then kill, and then the next chunk of...
That's kind of true, yeah.
It's right there, right? Like, and that's what makes fighters so ridiculously OP is that they can alpha you, but you can't alpha them. Doesn't matter the balance of the speed, but it gives you an eye, and like, if you don't want to alpha ships, just don't.
I don't disagree with you at all, right? But I think that caps are. I think there's a lot of different issues with caps, right? And like, I don't think you're wrong at all, right? You're definitely on point with what my personal thinking is, right? But
you see how that game plays out. If you design something so it can't be alphaed, then you get a kind of easy view into what happens when you can't alpha something.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. But like, can I just like finish the kind of example I was going to, and then I'll let you chip in, right? So you know, if you go and have a battleship, right? Let's say for example you got a battleship, right, and it's got like a massive, like mega, like base EHP or just base HP amount, right? But it's got like not really any resistances at all, like really really low resistances. You can like rep that with a whole bunch of Logi, and like it's going to get a bunch of HP, right? But it's not even going to be anywhere near the amount of like effective HP that's being repped, nowadays, right? And that change of values effectively, right? That is going to massively promote DPS meta of damage ships over alpha meta of ships, right? So like low base HP but massive resistances really hugely dominate the meta for like building alpha comps to be very strong, because you have to alpha through all of the shit before the reps land, because the reps are like enormously multiplied by their resistances.
But
and then on the flip side of that coin, right, if you have like huge amounts of base HP but no resistances, the reps don't really multiply at all, so DPS matters a huge amount more, pretty much because like the reps don't multiply at all, right? I mean, obviously in that case you can't balance. You just shoot the Logi in that case, right?
Yeah, but you can't balance only for 500 versus 500 fights, right? So
Can I bring a CCP response to how we can fix
I think that's the fundamental failing of EvE in a lot of ways, is that they've tried to balance the game and everything in the game, right, for enormous scales and also really small scales. And genuinely, I think they've done a pretty decent job of that overall. I mean, obviously, like, it's not great, but, like, holy shit, like, they could have done so much worse.
You know how fighters have their damage cap per server tick? What if we did that, but for the shield, armor, and hull?
Yeah.
Okay, so we weren't talking about caps of fighters until now, but like if you want to go into that,
I'm bringing it up just to say, what about for subcaps? We give them shield, armor, and hull there.
And it's not per server tick, right? It's per fighter in the squadron per server tick.
Yeah, that's how fighters work, I believe. Malachi, do you want, just for the chat, you know, because probably there's some people in the chat here, there's like 55 people watching the show. Do you want to just quickly go over the very, very basics of how shooting fighters works and how they're like, you know, ridiculous like dying mechanics work very quickly, just so that people like understand what you're talking about?
Yeah, so essentially you've got, like, for say space superiority fighters, I think you've got 12 in a flight, right?
I think so, yeah.
So one object in space consists of 12 fighters, and you've got five groups of 12 in space when you're flying a supercarrier. Groups of 12. Now the way the damage when you shoot a fighter, you only damage one fighter in that flight of 12. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it can either be damaged or dead. You can't do both things in the same tick.
I'm not sure about that.
I think you can't alpha one fighter in a flight because it always goes through that yellow status, then the green status, and then it green, yellow, then disappears in each ring around it, right? So my interpretation is that you have to damage it, then it dies. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Well, that's my opinion of how it works.
I think that regardless, it's very clear that you know, when you do smash like 200 fucking hacks shooting a fighter, it doesn't die instantly, right? Like it goes even in that particular case, right? It goes like down to like 0 health, and then it's like it's got to wait until the server tick finishes, then go over to the next fighter that you can shoot.
It's got to tick through each individual fighter in the thing, is my understanding. Now the problem that generates, right, is if you've got 250 fighters shooting 250 hacks, the hacks can't alpha fighters, but the fighters can alpha you, which just causes a huge disparity in damage application. So then you have to start you have to break your fleet down into smaller sections to try and maximize the amount of alpha damage you're doing per fighter. And I think you'd probably get to a point where it's, say you're in Munins, right? I'd suggest in reality you only want 20 Munins shooting a single flight of fighters. If you were to even the DPS scale between them shooting you and you shooting back.
That sounds roughly right to me, like roughly.
Which is not impossible to organise, whereas the fighters are still just lock shoot alpha. So I think it's a real interesting mechanic to try and deal with. Like if you're on the side chucking the fighters out, it's hilarious. If you're the side fighting against it, it's a nightmare.
Minifogan, do you have some thoughts on this? No? It's fine if you don't, dude. We're chatting about fighters and how ridiculously hard it is to defang them because of the effective damage cap on them.
I mean, the problem is, right, if they didn't have that, then, you know, carriers would be pretty useless because you'd be able to defang them so quickly with hacks because you apply so quick.
But just on that point, right, they can do it to you. So if you're on that's the disparity, right? Is that good enough that they can defang a hack fleet by killing all the hacks?
I think that's not a great comparison.
No.
The issue that I have, right, and I'll let you continue if you've got a point, Minnie.
I mean, the thing I would say on that is to an extent, yes, you can kill hacks very quickly if you have the right number of carriers, but if you don't, then, you know, it's pretty easy to tank, and you lose carriers pretty quickly to a hack fleet.
sorry, go super carriers, right? 5 flights.
Okay, supers, yeah. I mean, yes, supers do, I guess. But I mean, currently with the current meta of, everything's so expensive, people are not even using supers that much for fear of dread bomb.
But like, for argument's sake, and this is probably to my own playing group's detriment in the future to suggest it needs changing, right? Because I assume the next time anyone's going to use this mechanic at scale is us versus the other side of the fence. But to then go, you can't alpha. They can alpha you, but you can't alpha them. Plus, to actually deal with the source of your problem, you've now got to get onto a keep star to deal with the capital ship, right? So, and that capital ship, even if you defang it, docks in the keep star, resupplies, undocks, starts spewing out fighters again that I can't alpha, but they can alpha me. Like, surely there's. I'm amazed. I'm amazed if anyone's too thick to see the problem in that.
I can see the problem. The main issue that you have to run into there is you risk just turning them into literally pointless ships that have no function.
Yeah, that's absolutely a risk.
That's you'll just turn it into the point where there's no point running any form of fighters at all.
The other flip side of that coin, where there's
still also battling, you're still on that. You're still putting out in a super, right? You could be in. So I could have a full hack fleet of 250 people. You could have a full fleet of supers and still have 1,250 things for me to shoot at, right? There's still a massive disparity there that, yes, we're going to trade way better on the fighter front, but you're still going to wax a whole heap of hacks and still dock up and restock in fighters, right?
What's the point you're making there?
That the fact that you can realistically defang a super should be a real thing, right?
Oh, yeah, I agree, but you have to really factor into account that if you make it too easy to defang, you make it a functionally useless ship in long-term engagements.
Just quickly, guys, there's a poll in chat. One of the guys spent points to redeem a poll. Should EVE Online have a complete single-player mode in the way that Elite Dangerous does? So,
no, you should play.
For your voting.
No, you should play Elite Dangerous.
That's a very optimistic outlook on the development of the game, I would say.
I've never played it, so...
To come back to what you're saying, Cryo, right? Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like, the basic thing you're saying, right, is that if you nerf fighters too much, they will just be worthless and shit, right? That's pretty much what you're saying.
There's a point where it's just like, okay, I'm putting this out here, so they're there to die and not do anything, and it's like you risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. Right? That's absolutely a risk if
the flip side is true. Right? The flip side's true. Like, then I'm just putting hacks in place for them to fucking die.
The flip side is not only true. The flip side, where fighters are massively way too strong, possibly, arguably, for what the cost is to deploy them in space, is the status quo at the moment. Yeah, sure. Maybe if we nerf them too much, right, they'll be completely useless, right? That's obviously a thing that can happen to making a balance pass to anything in a game. But the current status of fighters in the game is that potentially way too strong, possibly, right? Is it possible that we might want to reduce the effectiveness of those, but not quite so far to the point that they are useless, right? Maybe it's gonna be like a bit worse than they are now,
Not until after test is next.
The point that I was trying to get to earlier on, to sort of kind of make my point, right? The main issue that I see with fighters, right, is that there's basically just no effective way to defang fighters or to kill fighters, right? Like, unless you bring your own fighters and your own SS carriers and your own SS fighters, right?
I am a big proponent of some form of subcap hull that can launch SS fighters or has an anti-fighter gunning platform, like it's a dedicated anti-fighter ship. So there's counterplay rather than...
And that is potentially something that the CCP developers might want to look into, right? But
that's just
as the state of the game is right now,
we proved the point, right? That's just what
right now. There's just not really, well, kind of, but not really, right? Like,
you can't
right now, as it stands.
Our counterplay to the Harpies was deploy a different kind of fighter.
Yeah, and they were extremely effective against Harpies, right? I'll let Mike talk.
But the point is, you still have to dedicate a whole fleet to that purpose. Like, it's a very narrow purpose to dedicate a whole fleet to counter
which is a different problem. Which
Like,
we can
you have
talk
to
about now.
deploy a dedicated fleet to counter a dedicated fleet is...
No, because a supercarrier can wax
Scale is an issue, though.
a supercarrier can wax everything, right? But now I have to deploy a specific ship to deal with an endless stream of fighters. Like, you can see I get the concept, but then it doesn't actually change the problem. It just kicks the can down the road.
The force multiplier effect is effectively the problem, right? And certainly there's been some arguments from people that capitals, carriers specifically, should be some kind of like force multiplier in small scale fights, which is true. That is how they work now. But the issue with force multipliers in the way that carriers are implemented, because there is many force multipliers in the game which are implemented differently to how carriers are implemented, right? When carriers implemented the way they are, they upscale massively, and their force multiplier effect upscales massively, right? So 20 carriers, you can reasonably defang 20 carriers with a subcap fleet, right? When you get to 200 carriers, it is exceptionally difficult to defang them. Purely due to the mechanics of how the game works, like the damage cap on fights, all this kind of stuff, right? It's the main problem I have with fighters as a whole, right? Which is pretty much like my main issue with capitals in the game. There's just no good option to be able to effectively defang carriers to kill fighters, like
Carmen,
at all.
Let Carmen finish his entire rant.
No, he rants too long. And this will add to it. Why the fuck can a carrier or a supercarrier lock out to 10,000 kilometers?
Yeah, it's certainly an option we can. It's a value that can be totaled.
They're not overpowered. They might get defanged and then be useless, but fuck, they can lock out to 10,000 kilometers.
Yeah, what's the point? I don't get the point. Like, I get like 2,000. I get maybe.
But why even that? Like,
you can look up like 4,000 almost, pretty much.
But it comes back to the balance rider going. Why is it such an order of magnitude higher than like a battleship, right? Like, every other ship is capped at dreads, everything.
What is the actual DPS output?
Rats. I mean, those
rats. Yeah, those motherfuckers, right?
Like a carrier puts out, when the DPS with light fighters applying correctly, right? They're putting out the DPS of effectively like 5 or 6 hacks, right? And pretty much everyone, for the most part, right? Like, if someone's like flying carrying a fleet, they're mostly multi-boxing, So like the force multiplier effect is like enormous, because it's like 5 to 1 pretty much, right? And if there was a way to effectively
hard to track,
have a counter to that 5 to 1 force multiplier, right? Then that would be fine. If there was a way to reasonably fight against that wasn't just having your own capitals, then that would make a lot of sense. That'd be okay, right? And
3 lights are doing 3,200 DPS on a hell, by the way.
Yeah, so that's like basically 5 or 6 hacks, right? Probably even more than that. But the issue that we come into, right, and this is kind of where we come into the concept of, all of the balance issues in the game being interrelated, right? Like, one of the main reasons that hacks have been used predominantly in the nullsec meta for a long time is that, if you are not able to move quickly, then if someone drops caps on you, then all of your shit dies. Like, if you cannot move quickly and you get dropped on by capitals and you get pinned down, then like if you're not willing to escalate and take like all of the way the cap fight, all of your stuff dies. Battle cruisers, battleships, like that's kind of always the way that it has been for many years, right?
Not if you live in low sec.
Well, yeah, obviously not if you're on low sec, right? But we're talking about like null sec a little bit here. But that's pretty much how it's worked for a long time, right? And that's kind of how we got to this point where it's like, capitals are just the I win button, right? Like, how do you fight against capitals without having your own capitals? And hacks, much as we might love to hate them or hate to love them, and there's probably a good amount of both of them on all sides of people who use them, hacks allow you to take fights where you might de-escalated on by caps, and then you can either continue the fight or leave the fight, and you have options how you can do stuff about it, right? Without hacks, if hacks were massively nerfed, right, we would have drastically less options to be able to take those kind of fights, and they would be hugely committal, pretty much. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not a good thing, but that's just how it would be. Like, every fight within a capital overlapping umbrella would be potentially like a gigawealth, right?
I mean, I am in the same camp, right? That yes, I think fighters are probably a bit too strong, and I love carriers. Carriers are probably my favorite ship to fly and just drop on things. I drop my Hell on things and Delve quite a bit. Actually, my Aeon right now, just because it's fun and I like the way fighters fly. But I'm of the opinion that they do need to be nerfed in some way in terms of that damage cap, but I think it needs to be via the introduction of counterplay rather than reducing some form of damage cap, like having a ship designed for it, having a mechanic for it. But
we proved a dedicated ship doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah,
with the current mechanics. With the current mechanics,
currently mechanicked and got a ship that you basically forced a ship into a role when that proved that there needs to be a ship for that role.
So now you want to make a ship that is efficient enough to defang the super that you don't want to be defanged, right?
So why, like my genuine pushback on your statement, Malachi, is why should you be allowed to, without the addition of a second fleet, be able to counter my second fleet?
Because you're already alphering Munins,
right? I don't care. Like the fact that we both have the hack fleet and I bring a super fleet, why are you allowed to, why would you be allowed to just counter that super fleet existing just by having your one fleet there? The fact that you, sure, you went, we rammed Harpies in there.
But it's not a counter. It's not a counter, right? It's just, it's literally impossible. It's not even a contest, right?
The point is not whether it can be done or cannot be done, with the existing conventional fleets on field, which is obviously going to always be the case, right? The issue is
Carmen, come on.
The issue basically, right, is the absolutely outrageous scale at which you need to bring specific counter fleets of subs just to fight fighters, basically, because of just how hard it is to kill them, and the mechanics of their HP and all that kind of stuff, right?
So,
I totally agree with what you're saying, right?
Please.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Cryo. I don't want this to be resolved in a way that we reduce how effective carriers are, but there needs to be much better ways to fight against carriers, right? It needs to be a more effective counterplay.
Let me go with this, please. So, Cryo, in my opinion, if we had so just talking about these scenarios where we're jumping into a pre-set up super camp on a gate, which is like the absolute pinnacle of...
I ran many of them, yes.
Yeah, cool. I did a lot of the jumping in, right? I think even if our fleets could have even if my Munin fleet could have alphaed fighters, we still would have lost. Correct?
In theory, yeah.
I'm 99% sure you would still obliterate everything that comes through there in a serious way, right?
We designed our entire doctrine, and
so the imbalance is still so far into that side of the court, right? That even bringing in another doctrine specifically to fight the fighters, even if my strongest doctrine could do it, I would still lose. It doesn't change the dynamic at all. If you get what I mean.
The question there basically is
can I talk to Cryo about this? Sorry, Carmen.
Sure.
Do you get what I'm saying there? Yeah. So,
however, what you're we are both coming in on the. I think we both agree that there is a problem. I think we both think there needs to be a different approach to solving it. I think that's where we're at. I'm not disagreeing with you that they need to be the same. I think they need to be changed. I think I am in the camp of adding a mechanic to get rid of them rather than making it easier for current fleets to do it, is where I am sitting from. You guys did try with Harpies, and where you're saying is we tried Harpies, it didn't work. My response to that is there needs to be a ship that does make it work. There needs to be a class
and I guess
designed for it.
And I'm going, even if even if our strongest platform could do it and we would still lose, that ship would have to be, without changing the fighters in some way, would have to be incredibly strong at killing fighters, right?
Just bring in, I would like, in my ideal world, like my one ship that I would love to add to the game is some form of T2 battle cruiser or T2 cruiser that can launch small flights of fighters.
But
just
then
for the fun of it. And having something like that designed as a fighter counter, because then you can put your carrier faults that you weren't going to use into that ship.
But that's still getting, like, the reason Harpies work to some degree, right, is because they sig tank to some degree. They live a little bit longer, right? Whereas if you start doing it in, like, forgetting the specifics of it, it's just like, without changing the fighter itself, I don't think you really solve the imbalance that's created.
I think it's and this is where we come to EvE is such a complex game where I don't think we can sit here talking in circles about it fix the problem.
But I think it's also, you need to go back up the chain, right? Is it really the fight, like the dynamics between the fighters and the things, or is it because the caps are invulnerable under a jammer on a citadel where they can dock and resupply fighters anyway? Like,
to clarify, we never docked and resupplied fighters. We resupplied off of tethered Titans that we fed.
Exactly.
Titans?
I've done it. Yeah. I've done it. Yeah. You don't want to dock and undock in tie-dye. It's the right way to do it.
We set a Titan in the middle of our super blob and fed fighters into its fleet hangar.
But then you're going, so where is the problem, right? Is it down there on that gate at the macro level, the micro level? There's just a whole chain of things up there that you need to be solved. So
I think that situation, right, where you have like an extremely good defensive position, carriers in tether close to the gate on a jammer and stuff, like that should be strong.
Oh yeah, but so it should be strong, and it's incredibly.
It should be breakable though, but it should be strong.
It's still incredibly strong, even if you can elf with the fighters, right? Like, I think that's Cry just kind of agreed that even if we could elf with the fighters, they probably still win.
That's kind of what I think too. Like if the fighters were weaker and they were easier to defang and stuff, even in that same situation, you would still have a very strong defensive situation.
You're still resupplying off the Titan and pumping them out 10.
And here is the other counterpoint I have of making, and this is actually the part where it comes back into EvE as a bad game that is hard to design for. Changing fighters in this way, how does that affect PvE?
I don't care about PvE, so
someone does. Someone will.
Yeah,
I don't rat, but someone is going to move. Someone will lose their mind.
I don't even know what scarcity is, to be honest.
Well, I think to take the most basic approach to it and say that fighters shouldn't have this kind of artificial damage cap, and they should have a bit less HP generally, right? The outcome of that would be if you PvE and your fighters get shot by rats, then you lose fighters a bit more often. So
you don't.
Need to, less AFK, right?
And you don't maybe because you give them a bit more hit point to make up for the alphering of them. Like in PvE, right? It's not like they get shot once and die. It's still a damage bar that goes down. It's just not the damage bar pauses every 1/12th, right?
It's also kind of amazing to me that this kind of probably is even an unintentional mechanic, right? Whereby you can't lose more than one fighter from a squad per server tick kind of thing. Probably someone didn't design that to be that way. It was just an accidental thing that's going to happen.
It is not intentional.
I mean, it's amazing that kind of feels like potentially a small detail actually has an enormous effect on how the game is played, right? In some levels at least.
It's one of those things. I think the thing that really put into perspective on how there's just such a butterfly effect for these changes is how the mobile observatory edition really fucked over nomadic hyper supers. And the fact
you say that, but I can only speak from my point of view, right? But I've not really seen people to even use observatories really that often at all anywhere. I don't know if it's different for goons, but
it makes it really hard for people to move a super if they're moving, trying to be sneaky about it and going through the backfields. Because if they get spotted, then they are very easy to catch.
Certainly in theory, that's absolutely how it happens. That is absolutely true. But in practice, how often have you actually seen it to occur that way in practice? Is my question.
I'm not too sure. Actually, I haven't actually looked at the numbers and thought how bad that could be. That's
from my own anecdotal point of view, like I have almost never seen observatories to really be used at all, like in almost any context.
We saw them a lot when we were harassing test riders in Delve, actually. They would drop them, but they're so easy to die. But that's a case of you're harassing test riders with bombers. It's kind of hard when you're a solo super with your one recon ult, right? You can't really take care of it, and then your jump time is up, and you can't decloak and safe log easily. It's like such a...
Slightly tangential topic here. Have you looked into the Veil Guard cloaking boosters at all? Because that was certainly a thing that they...
Yeah, that was a very late addition. That wasn't in there for like the first 2 months.
So I think too many people have like looked into that stuff, but it's they're like vaguely useful, but like really, really expensive for what they do, and they're like not really like that useful. It's kind of like extends
the easiest solution
hardening thing like a little bit.
The easiest solution is put 2 or 3 torp launchers on a stealth bomber that you're cloaking a system with, and just 3-shot it. It's not hard.
But I mean, isn't the other side of that like the ninja super? Like, if you don't have that, they're almost invulnerable, right? Until they decide to engage.
Yeah, it comes back to everything's all like weirdly connected. But it's even just moving your super across to other regions almost became impossible if the pumpers are smart.
Yeah, that's a good question in the chat.
Read it out.
Well, I'm just reading out the most recent one, which I think is pretty decent. I believe this was in relation to chatting about like fighters and stuff, right?
Yeah, read it out.
And the question is, one side is using supers already. The problem isn't ships and fighters. The problem is tether, which I don't necessarily think is totally true. To be honest with you, like I really hate tether. I think tether is a massively overpowered mechanic. But I think in that particular situation, like that's really not what the issue is at all.
Yeah, I can't do another genius or retarded.
Go for it.
Should tether not apply if you have a log off timer rather than an aggro timer?
I kind of think so. Like I would be very happy to see tether not be able. You know when you jump into something and you can't have that tether, it's got like that 60-second timer, right? If you've got a like PvP combat timer for like 50 minutes or some shit, like I'd be very happy to see you just not be able to retether for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's 60 seconds if you don't have any kind of PvE timer, right? You don't have the log off timer.
Some instant counterplay to that is I would just make sure I have 10-20 horde reds parked in the middle of my super fleet, so you can't swing supers nearby. So there's like immediate counterplay that you can just immediately do, but that adds an additional layer of counterplay to it, right?
Yeah, but it can't like this thing. Where you like, I'm willing to put things on a defensive fort without a cyno jammer because I know the other side might drop something, but I know within 60 seconds I'm going to be able to tether everything up and minimize my losses.
Even on like a massively smaller scale as well, right? If you want to go and like fight over like an Athena or some shit, like there is like extremely abusive plays you can make with tether, right? But like what I would say is that none of the stuff that I've seen, which I think is like horrific bad stuff that happens in a game, like none of it is initial taking of tether. All of it is related to retethering after you have created a combat timer and like done something. So to have a delay or some shit on like the retethering, I think that would resolve a lot of these issues. Like, and I think tether's absolutely broken. I think it's mega overpowered, right? But having a retether delay, that might change my mind, maybe.
Some kind of like how wormholes are polarization, like something like that. So you can't break tether and then unbreak it. Then
maybe, yeah.
Like you can have one initial retether and then you've got like a cooldown.
Yeah, and then you just get into how long should that time frame be, and if it's
should be more than nothing. I think that's my take, right?
Yeah,
I think the idea of intosising a structure to break tether makes no sense because why would I just not shoot you?
Yeah, that makes no sense. Yeah. I tell you what is interesting though, Cryo, is by the notion of you kind of like speaking about the polarization stuff. Like you've reminded me of one of these other things I'm like really fucking bitter about in this game. I don't know if we have time to chat about it now, but antiplexes, man, holy shit, antiplexes are way too good.
Oh, I think they're way too... The fact that both you and I can get a fleet and travel 11 jumps and have a fight in like 5 regions away from both of our home keep stars.
Like, if you look at the map, right?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing though, right? Otherwise, the content doesn't happen.
I mean, it's kind of like they gave us, jump timer fatigue, and then to stop us from doing this with Titans, jumping to a Titan, going to the other side of the pods, jumping to a Titan, and traveling 5 regions in 11 jumps. They're like, no, this is too overpowered. We're getting rid of this. Here's jump fatigue.
Yeah.
But also, here's better jump bridges that do the exact same thing.
But you got to look at you look at force projection, right, and how they've actually approached it. Is they've actively made force projection for smaller ships easier and easier. So there's this. I suspect CCP has this concept of projecting absolute force is terrible, but projecting some minor force is definitely what we want. When you look
Which is kind of crazy a little bit, right? Like Cryo was saying, like this is a really good example, right? Over the last month or 2 months or so, most of the fights that Test has been engaging in, big fights, it's pretty much been fighting over Fortizars in Curse, pretty much, right? And if you go and look at the map, Test is pretty much as far in the northeast as you can get, right? In the terrain regions, and we've been fighting against, Goons and the Imperium, who are pretty much as far in the southwest as you can possibly get, and we've been fighting in the middle between where the two of them are, and both sides have been able to get there, to the fight effectively within about 15 gate jumps, and a Titan bridge potentially on each side, right? It's kind of crazy. And the point that you were making about Phoebe, right? Like when Phoebe introduced jump fatigue, right? Because Phoebe obviously introduced jump fatigue to jump bridges. What a lot of people forget was that before Phoebe, there was no jump fatigue on jump bridges, as far as I'm aware, right? Obviously, it's before my time, so I was like, I'm not really sure on that. But yeah, they had like massive jump high res, right? Like that probably wasn't great either. But not only were they, CCP willing to make it just as good as like those ridiculous highways were back then, but they made it even better because now you can put capels through them as well, right? So you can put capels through jump bridges now.
I mean, look, it's the difference is back then you'd drop a pause and you'd get 2 Titans in it. You could go from the north to the south really quick. So they added the jump fatigue, but the counterpoint with and then they've added jump bridges, sure. But the problem is you can't just drop a jump bridge in a system like you can a pause and wait for it to.
Takes a bit of time to get them.
Yeah, you've got to wait the 30 days for Strat Index 3. So they have.
Well, even back then, you still needed to wait for the Strat Indexes, sub indexes to have the sov level to drop the jump bridges, right? Like it wasn't like you just drop it back then either.
Like jump bridges back then were useful. I mean, I got to admit, if you guys were playing back then, do you guys remember having the image where you draw the jump bridges onto it and you'd have that saved somewhere? So you're like, okay, where am I going? And you have to plan.
We still have those, yes.
But
yes, we still have.
Just to go very quickly to a question that's in the chat about, how is that a bad thing, having more of an ability to have more projection for, people who have, anti-specs networks and stuff like that. It's kind of a two-sided question, right? And there's definitely two sides to it. Some part of it is really good because obviously with a smaller amount of players in a game and lower population and stuff, having more ability to project is probably quite good because it means more people can get to fights, right? So you can help get to more content, right? But the flip side of that is that we don't really know how much, if we didn't have quite so much projection for big null blocks, if they couldn't project quite so far, how many spaces would open up in between that smaller groups might be able to, begin to foster in? We don't really know about
that. The biggest problem was, at the time, right, was that there were a few groups that were capable of utilizing it, and it stifled anyone else developing super fleets and the like. It was because you couldn't use caps at all, right?
Yeah.
So Test, for example, didn't correct me if I'm wrong, is Test built their super fleet post that point because then you've got the capability to do it without having hostile supers dumped on your face 5 minutes after something gets tackled.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we did that post the Phoebe changes, but also very, very deep in the south, away from anyone.
Yeah, but it's that. It was PL and NC, and maybe Goons had the capability, pre-skill points. There was a whole bunch of things that meant the oppressors could keep everyone else oppressed way too easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of get that impression now too. Except instead of it being like cap oppression, it's like subcap blobbing oppression. I think, and I think antiplexes allow that to happen a little bit too easily, perhaps.
I mean, wormholes do the same thing. Like when you've got big null blocks that have dedicated wormhole scanning teams, or you introduce all the drifter holes. We can project force anywhere we need to, right? But you just can't do it at the drop of a hat. It takes some planning and some setup, I guess, is the difference between then and now.
I have a lot less issues with wormholes because it takes a bunch of effort to do it, right? And it's also unreliable. You don't know if it's really going to happen or not. You can spend a bunch of time doing it and it might not work out for that thing you want to go to, right? But antiplexes are just like...
Imagine how
I would
absolutely
like to see a polarization mechanic for antiplexes. I think that might help a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one for like tether and that. It's something.
Imagine how bad the Goon Super Umbrella would have been in the days of rock calls if it could have covered like 3 regions rather than just delve.
Never would have had one if it hadn't existed, right?
Anyway, so just a quick introduction.
Wouldn't have, man, because there would have been no games.
We're joined by Mav, the host of Trash Talk whenever he feels like it. How you doing, Mav?
I hear, Kale.
It's like mostly Thursdays, right, Mav?
Yeah, it's like... I mean, I got COVID and food poisoning, and I took a couple of weeks out, but...
The
I think
host of
we're
Trash
back
Talk
now.
when everyone not sick.
Yeah.
Getting COVID's a pretty fucking weak excuse, dude.
It's true. Who was it? ProGod, who was like FCing with COVID?
Yeah, God, he sounded like shit.
Fucking mad lad.
Yeah.
We moved the time up. It's like 2000 now, which I think works a bit better.
On Thursday.
Yeah. Or it's 2030? I can't remember. I think it's 2000, but it works a bit better.
I'm the host and can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know what time I'm showing is. I don't fucking know. Whatever, people will turn up anyway. This is how it is, right?
Well, sometimes people turn up.
Does anyone want to address some questions from the chat? I think there's a couple of questions for on
I think the statement of you would have gotten PL supers dumped on your face before your second siege cycle is a very good statement, because I remember existing in that time frame and it wasn't fun. PL was just like, I own this half of the map, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would dispute that was a bad time to be around when there was no jump fatigue.
Having helped execute it, it was an impressive, like the amount of coordination and sino ults and knowing exactly where they are for all the ranges was an impressive setup they had going at the time. To be able to hit any spot on the map within X amount of minutes, it was crazy.
Yeah, I'm not denying it wasn't impressive, but holy shit, was it impressive.
Yeah.
I think it's a good example of
fun,
I think it's a good example of the amount of effort you need to put in something is not really a balancing factor for the most part. Because if you put a lot of effort into something, and a bunch of your people in your group put a lot of effort into something, and it's like mega giga strong, and there's not really anything you can do against it, like the amount of effort you have to do it, it's not really a balancing factor at all, right? And one of my good analogies that I want to make here, right, is drifter holes in the current era of EvE are absolutely ridiculously easy to find. If you go and spend the time and effort to actually, do the right stuff to be able to, very quickly map drifter holes, it's stupid, absolutely stupid how fast you can map connections between regions, right? And I'm going to even go so far as to explain how you do it, right? Because it's really easy. You just have to be really massively time sensitive and willing to stack a lot of time into it, right? If you go and spend some time on Google, you can find maps of what are all of these systems in particular regions that have Jove observatories that have the option or ability to spawn drifter holes, right? So what you want to do to effectively be this kind of person that can map drifter holes very, very quickly you want to go and create a whole bunch of alpha accounts, not necessarily in shuttles, although shuttles are a great way to get to where you're going, but you mostly want to have a frigate with like an MWD, because you're going to need to like burn to the hole and go inside and stuff. But basically what you do, right, you create like a massive stack of alpha accounts, and you go and put one account each in every single system in a region that has a Druid observatory that can potentially spawn a drifter hole, right? And once you've then set that up and you've put all of these individual alpha accounts into a frigate with an MWD kind of thing, right? Like the way that you map a region of do they have any drifter holes in it, you just like create a launch group to like launch all of those accounts in a row, and you just like log it in, and is there a drifter hole in the overview? No, close it. Launch the next one. Is there a drifter overview in the hole? No, close it. Launch the next one. Oh, there's a drift hole in the overview. Okay, so I warp to it, and then you just like write down like which system has like which hole, which like connecting hole, and like you can literally map a entire region. Like which drifter holes are in which systems in an entire region in like 5 minutes, possibly 5 to 10 minutes, depending. And then the ones that you do find, you can just like burn a character in, can create bookmarks stuff. Like you can do like everything in like 15 minutes, like 20 minutes maybe tops. There's a lot of holes, and like it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. Like finding connections between drifter holes between regions. You can just do it. It's like finding connections as long as you put the effort in to set the stuff up to be able to do it. It is absolutely outrageously easy to do it.
Is this a good thing or a bad thing, Carmen? I'm not quite sure where you're going to end up.
I kind of think it's a bad thing, right? And like one of the reasons I think it's a bad thing is because it is the main way that people do it, right, is effectively abusing alpha accounts, which I'm not going to say I've not done it, right? I do it, right? It's a thing you could legally do within the bounds of the game, right? I do it all the fucking time. I got stacks of alpha accounts, right? It's stupid. You shouldn't be able to do it. It should take some effort at least to like go and look for stuff rather than just like having 50 accounts logged out that you can just log in and find them.
Considering how hard it is to find some other things in space, that is, it's probably the more powerful thing, and it's very easy to find, right?
Do you think they should be probable rather than on the overview?
Well, you think about like these things. Like, there's a couple of things that
I wouldn't want to say it, dude. I mean,
I don't think it's. To me, it's like these keys to unlock vaults or whatever they are. I tried that for 2 minutes, found one, and went. It's incredibly hard to find this thing that could generate a ton of content. It's hard to find the things that drop the faction super blueprints, right?
Yeah, like the low sites.
Yeah, but something like this that is really powerful and lets you project force just pops up on your overview, right?
Yeah, like it literally lets you project anywhere in the entire game, right? Like as long as you seed enough alpha characters in the right places, all over the universe, right? As long as you're willing to put enough effort in, you can map A to B connections between effectively any region that you want to in an extremely small amount of time.
It does provide some gambling for my corp in watching Pando ping and then gambling on which region he's going to appear in with 150 kickies.
I don't want to say that I think it's a bad thing necessarily, because it's a mechanic that allows you to go somewhere else and create content, right? And in a game with let's call it a dwindling player base, right? That's probably a good thing, but I think just how easy it is to go so targeted from A to B is like pretty. I think it's a bit too much personally.
The thing is, though, like, there's kind of limitations in how they can be used, right? Like, the massive super null blocks aren't using them for, like, their main kind of strategic stuff, right?
Well, no, they use them for, like, whaling and stuff, but, like, not, like, main strats, right?
So it does, like, in my opinion, like, I don't think it has a massive impact on the game. Like, I think whaling's good. Like, you can't project, like, your entire super fleet for a drifter hole, right? So it's not like...
I think whaling's good too. I think the existing whaling meta that we've had for a while is really, really awful and unhealthy, but I like whaling, and I think that we should have a better whaling meta. And I'm sure there's a better way to, like, make that work, But honestly, I've not really spent a lot of time thinking about it to have some good suggestions about it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Like, I hate Kikis. I hate Kikis so much.
Yeah.
Kikis are absolutely broken as shit. They're mega overpowered, but like...
But it's a bit like...
And they used to be worse.
Isn't it just like high-sec ganking, though? Like, you take 150 people to frag 3 vulnerable people. Yes, it's high-value targets or whatever, but like, personally, it's not my gameplay style, right? I couldn't think of anything worse than doing that, because there's just it's barely a contest, right?
That's kind of what it is currently, at least in what I've seen for the most part recently.
In nullsec, right?
In years back, right, whaling fleets, had a slightly different MO where they were like mostly designed to fight the response fleet and like get a good fight out of it. And kind of broadly, what they mostly do now is like just try and kill stuff before.
Because you can't project a hack fleet, right? You can only project destroyers.
Well, I mean, like, it mostly works. The mechanics of it mostly work the same now as it did then, right? It's just like people are just doing it differently, pretty much. Trig ships in general are OP. I mean, I don't know. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not pretty good. Kikis are potentially a bit better than they should be, but I wouldn't want to like nerf them massively. I think whaling certainly has a place, right? And like, I certainly would be very upset if there was no targets for whaling in the future, right? Which is something that has been drastically decreased by the changes that are being proposed by CCP. But I would like to see whaling work in a way where there are better and more interesting fights that happen because of whaling. Is pretty much like my stance on it. I don't have any good opinions or suggestions how to do it, but I think that's how it should work.
I would like to see more whaling when test supers die.
Probably gonna have to wait too long.
Like, so Inuit are the main group that does most of the whaling with Kikis, right? But Kikis are pretty easy to counter. Like, I don't get why people think they're so OP. They're very easy to counter.
It's just the optimal, like we were talking about earlier, right? It's the optimal meta for that particular task.
Yeah, they're almost like purpose-built for that particular thing they're doing. Like, they are so good at it. The thing that I have issue with, and I'm totally willing to be turned around on this and be convinced I'm wrong, I think the Kikis are too good at fighting conventional subcap fleets.
Well, I think Kikis just got nerfed into the ground, didn't they? When there's going to be no more rocks on field, there's no point taking them.
That's not enough to Kikis, that's enough for the content of Kikis to chase.
Like, whaling just got its fucking death knell, didn't it?
But to take on a subcap fleet with Kikis, you have to be a very good FC in terms of positioning your fleet to not just have your Kikis wiped off the grid by mutants.
By good FC, you mean just ping long enough and hard enough until you double their numbers and then go? And
then have enough mutants, yeah.
But that in itself is like what I think is bad about the meta, right? Like, the idea that you're effectively like whaling someone and like, yeah, sure, you get a kill or you don't get a kill, whatever, right? But then you go and fight the response fleet. If your goal is to fight the response fleet, pretty much how that fight goes is that if you are able to get at 0 to fight them, then you have a fight. And if you are not able to get to 0 to fight them, you just like auto lose, like giga lose if you can't get to 0 on them. Like, that's not that's not a great meta for a fight, right? It's like, you have like one thing that you can do, and if it works, you just like get a good fight, and if it doesn't work, you just like lose your whole fucking fleet, basically. Like, that's not a good meta for fights.
What is a good meta for fights?
Having like more options than that, man. It's like you get like one dice roll, and it's like, if it don't work, you just like lose your whole fleet. It's dumb.
Yeah, there's also just nothing else you can bring through a wormhole to do that. That's the other problem there, right? There's no projection power.
Yeah, it is. I'm kind of okay with there not being quite that much projection power, right? But I don't know. Like, I don't know what I would like to see to make this change for the better. It's not something I've thought about a lot, actually, until I've been chatting about it today. But yeah, I think that these fights can be better, right? Like, I don't want to see whaling go away, which is possibly quite ironic to a lot of people, because all I do is like fight whaling fleets when they come through our space, right? I think it's a good
You
concept.
need some content that isn't bashing, right?
What do you think about the Poachfin power projection meta.
What do you mean by Putchman power projection?
Like the fact that you've got filaments that you target a particular part of space.
You mean the filaments that go into Putchman?
And the ones that come out of it, right? Like, so currently you've got like 25-man filaments that take you somewhere random, which is more than likely in blue space. But should those filaments allow you to target the north, the south, maybe not a specific region, but a side of the map at least?
Putchman is a very interesting area of space where there's a lot of good content going on. I think it's a great example of good
it's nice, but yeah, and it's those filaments that allow you to target an area, right? It's interesting, and whether that should just apply
I don't think the filament mechanic in like where you can end up is kind of driving the content. I think it's a lot of like the artificial limitations that Potchman introduces that gives like the smaller groups the opportunity to kind of have those fights. It's a lot harder to blob there, and the fights end up being much more interesting because of it, I think.
A lot of it is certainly also like the particular groups that have become interested and involved in, going to Poshfan to do stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of really interesting groups out there.
I mean, if in a week, Goons and Test and Fire and Frat and everyone like got really interesting at a Poshfan, like suddenly the entire dynamic would massively change, I think.
I mean, Poshfan has the fundamental advantage of there's no way to own and control that space. Like, yeah, you can wipe out the other structures out of there, but you can't remove the NPC stations.
Well, yeah, but if all of the null blocks, suddenly had like a massively larger interest in being involved in it and being omnipresent there all the time and being there to go to fights sometimes and stuff like that, like it would change how it works, right?
I think it got opened up too much. It was very hard to get in there and get the content, and then I think it just got slammed open way too wide on the other end.
I've actually got the AAR from one of the Rote guys about the fight yesterday, I think it was.
Oh, is that the Frat Giga feed?
Yeah. So I've got because I messaged the guys in Rote, went, hey, look, do you want anyone? Does anyone want to hop on the show and talk about it? No one wanted to, so they gave me a AAR to read out. If anyone's interested in hearing it.
Sure.
So I'm going to paraphrase it a lot because it's a little bit all over the place. So Frat came in, they got dragged at 0 on the fort by bubbles. They said outrageously and left as TLDR. They tried to shoot the dreads on field, but couldn't break them. So one of the problems with Frat was they couldn't decide if they wanted to shoot the forts, shoot the subcaps, or shoot the capitals on field. A lot of groups came in on that on both sides. Some were called, some weren't. The Vindies were just, because the Tempests were in range, the Vindies were able to just crap out of them. Apparently, Two Glory lost their best FCs and are now led by Canem and Pitts, because Anura and Wally are in now Snuff. Apparently, at one point, Wally had 40 jams on him, because, spread jams, yeah, nah. Also, Norris was there on field, but they're not going to say who the character's name is, because, or if it is true or not, but I have heard that Norris was banned again. So BJK was target calling, which didn't go very well. So apparently they actually let them into Pochfan tonight. So the last time there was a Fort Armored Timer, they just door stopped them. They just stopped them coming. This time, like the locals, they wanted to fight, so they let them in. Bad warp-ins, getting warped into 0 and stuck in a fort. Also, can we talk about that? I absolutely hate the fact that you can get stuck in a fucking structure. It is stupid.
Skill issue.
It's ridiculous.
You shouldn't be able to warp into a structure. Like, it isn't just a skill issue, it's a fucking physics thing. How the hell do you warp into a solid object and get stuck in it?
Honestly, like, at some point, it's just one of those things in the game that you kind of just have to deal with.
It's one of the things you have to play around, and you have to know, and you should set up bookmarks in advance.
I mean, I personally think that it should be treated as an exploit. Like, I'm sure it won't be, but, like...
dropping a bubble inside the structure should 100% be an exploit. But if you just fuck up a warp in, then you deserve it.
Yeah, like, intentionally dropping a bubble such that the edge of the bubble is inside the center of the citadel, and if you warp to it, you get dragged in. Like I think that should be an exploit.
What no one should do is fit a bubble
It's
onto your Fortizar and launch it on yourself. You should not do that.
It's so hard to, it's so hard to like, what's the word I'm looking for it, right? Like judge that stuff, right? It's so hard to like enforce that.
No, it's not.
On a,
it's not.
Realistic
that's
level.
Bullshit. That's bullshit, right?
In the sense that, like what we can expect from the GMs to do, I think it's unrealistic to expect them to enforce that on a realistic level, right?
I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I understand that it is on the FC not to make that mistake, but the fact that it is something that you have to actively think about and make sure that you don't do when you're warping to a wreck or something trying to position yourself, it shouldn't be the case. You should warp to it and just hit the model. Like, you shouldn't get stuck in the model for, unless you have docking rights, 3 minutes for emergency.
It's an everyone has to deal with it situation, though, right? It's not like it's unnecessary.
Yeah. I'm not pointing fingers to anyone. I'm just saying that in general, as a mechanic, can we just agree that it's fucked and needs to be sorted?
I was there in the tiny NC Fleets command channel, right? Doing absolutely fucking nothing.
I think I remember this.
And the only thing that reinforced to me is how retarded citadels are for engaging on. Like
are we going to cover that today, or
the bubble in the thing, the PDS, the tether up, tether up to get into a better position? Like, goddamn.
You haven't lived until you've tried to attack a citadel against someone who's using tornadoes to defend it, right?
Oh,
and like what they will do, what they'll do, right, is they'll sit in tether and they will line out to either a celestial or a bookmark or something, and they will just like broadcast, lock, and alpha a ship and then warp off, and then they turn around and warp back into tether and do the exact same fucking thing, point into a different direction. You haven't lived until you've seen that. It's like absolutely ridiculous abuse of tether.
I was gunning a fort for good sacks when they were doing that. It was an amazing time. We were fighting worthless Care Bears, and they were masters at it.
Yeah, good sacks are fucking absolutely rage-inducingly good at it. Like they were like the reason why during the war, at least, we were sometimes at least like pretty good at fighting against these like wind-round tornado stuff. It's because we spent so much time fighting the Stain Russians who did it, and they were so infuriatingly good at it, right?
Psychotic turtle, man, Jesus Christ.
I was really enjoying. I was there, set up, waiting. We were having some bombers moving in from Delve, like just slowly, because we knew that this Kibos was bringing Lashak, so we're like, let's bring some bombers in. And then the Lashaks jumped in, and the tornadoes just warped over and alpha'd too, and then warped off grid. And I was just like, oh fuck, this is terrifying.
Tornadoes are so strong.
I don't think they should. Oh, I don't know. On the one hand, they're really good and they're extremely skill intensive to do well, and they are hard to fight.
I mean, look, the easiest way to do it and to make it fair and even, so to speak, is just get rid of their ability to fit MJDs.
The main issue that I have with the tornadoes, right?
That is actually my fault that they can fit MJDs.
Is it really?
God damn it, Malachi.
Do you remember when T3 or these battle cruisers came out and they couldn't fit MJDs? And then they bought out MJDs for all the other battle cruisers. I raised that at an EDU with a EvE, a CCP dev, and they changed it a couple of weeks later.
God damn it, Malachi. Alright guys, look, if you have issues with tornadoes killing you and then MJDing out of a bubble, make sure to send all EvE mail SRP requests to Malachi.
Yep.
I think moving MJDs would be interesting because you'd have to rely on having your command destroyers being able to boost you all off.
Yeah.
You can count tornadoes in nullsec, right? Like in lowsec, it's a whole different.
Not really.
Really, like you can grab one but the rest just MJD off.
Certainly in lowsec, they're massively more oppressive because the amount of available counters are a lot less, right? But even in nullsec, like the amount of available options that you have to counter them is very low to start with, and also none of them are like really that good.
You just shoot the sabers first and then laugh.
Yeah. Pretty much you got like 2 or 3 like good options for it, right? And since warp formations have become a thing, then you have less options, right? One of the old options used to be chemo T3s, right? They worked pretty good if you could hit a good run kind of thing. Since the warp formations came out, you can warp in warp formations, and then smart bombing T3s, they don't really work very well at all because you're able to warp spread out, so you can't be kill everything in one go kind of thing. And then effectively, like, your two other options are like just shooting them, which requires you to bring a doctrine, or at least a subset of your doctrine, that can just fire back at their particular range, which is pretty long, that they fight at. And the other option is like probing dictators, or either like a prober that can fleet warp dictators onto them. And probing dictators don't really work at all unless the FC fucks up, because you are just able to warp out faster, basically. Probing dictators are effective in making them always warp around and like not really take too many shots, kind of thing. But like, they don't really ever like, you're not really going to kill a tornado fleet unless they like massively fuck up.
We killed a few at Cat using them, but we were like staggering the dictators, and we had people who were multi-boxing, and they were very, very good at what they were doing.
The Stain Russians are like really, really good. Like the good Sax, Pharaoh, these dudes.
Who were countering. We had some really good probers, and we were staggering it. So we'd send one dictator in. As they were warping off, the second one would be cycling their probes, and like when they land, warping, and
even if you're very good, it's like not that effective.
It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to like either mitigate a lot of their damage or keep them off grid. Or in the end, we killed them a few times. But yeah,
it's web bubbles made them really strong as well, right?
I think it helps them to like warp faster. But honestly, even without it, they still work.
Without it, we've popped web bubbles to get our tornadoes into warp faster. 100%.
Yeah. It's just another.
We spent like years fighting against this shit with our side of S-Terra that's close to Stain.
Yeah, it's a strong concept that gets even stronger when something gets added to the game, right?
Pretty much like what we found to be the most effective counter is to just shoot back at them when they're in space, right?
Eagles are a good counter.
It is not the most effective counter. The most effective counter is not to log in.
Well, honestly, like that is 100% right, and I'll tell you this because I was the person that proposed this, right? That is 100% the reason why we adopted a TFI doctrine when we were living in S-Terra, right? It was to fight against tornadoes, like the windrunner tornadoes, because they've got really high EHP, so like they struggle to die, to tornadoes.
Yeah,
I think they have really long range and arty, and you can just volley tornadoes.
Yeah, I think
they can shoot us, we can shoot you back.
But it comes back to
that was literally the strategy.
It comes back to some of those balance things we were talking about earlier, right? And I think it's where you have what am I saying? We do it a little bit right in. There's some modules that have a positive and a negative to offset it. And there's too many modules in the game that have a massive positive with no negative to offset it. So you look at, say, micro warp drives with Sig Bloom. Sensor boosters, no negative trade-off, right? Apart from like giving up the actual fitting slot itself, right?
That's interesting, yeah.
That's where you start bringing more skill into the game. Maybe sensor boosters affect your align time, or there's got to be some trade-off for everything that makes you stronger. It should offset you in some other fashion.
I feel like most of those trade-offs that have existed in the game, they're like not really meaningful in any like real way for the most part.
Yeah, it's like guns and using cap, right? Cap's supposed to be the offset, but cap's pretty much infinite in most ships, right?
Yeah, we're kind of suckling back to like the hack argument of what hacks are strong and how do we make them not strong kind of thing. Because the cap thing was one of the things you were proposing for that, right?
Yeah, sorry, and it's just it's one of those things as well where like bubbles on things that are blanket rules, like it just makes it better with no real trade-off. Like MJ Destroyer is a really good example where you could just boosh everything that was in range, and it was a blanket kind of rule, an absolute thing. But once you make it 25 and you don't have control over who the 25 is, then it becomes more dynamic with pros and cons and trade-offs about whether to do it or not.
Can I like just take a minute or two to go off a little bit on like a soapbox here with some thoughts that I've got about hacks, basically?
Oh boy!
I mean,
if I say no, will you not do it?
If you're like really vehemently against that, I won't do it.
I'm gonna get pour a rum.
Yeah, he knows what's coming.
Yeah, look, we know.
Oh, is this?
This was told at the beginning of the train.
Is this AB something or others?
Go pour your rum. I'll wait for you to get back and we can chat about it. So just to go very quickly back to kind of one of the topics we had earlier on in the show, which is obviously a hot topic in the community at large overall. Air quotes, hack meta being a thing. All hacks are not equal, right? Like, all hacks are not good. Some hacks are really, really fucking bad. The hack meta overall, that people consider to be the hack meta, is effectively like three shits.
Yeah.
It's like Moonins and Eagles and Serbs for the most part, right? I don't think anyone's got any like huge existential issue with any of the hack holes, really, that are not Moonins and Eagles and Serbs, right? And that means, the way I see it at least, right? I mean, obviously there's like some bigger, wider ranging issues there. But if we can fix like those holes, very, very fairly, it's not even just the holes, right? Like, everyone uses the same fucking fits, right? It's the fits that are the issue, and what the holes and fitting and stuff allow you to fit. Like, that's really kind of what we need to fix. So I'll give you an example here of a change that we could make, or CCP could make, right? That would fix, or at least mitigate some of these issues for some of the issues we have, or people perceive there to be for some of these ships, right? The Eagle. Let's start with the Eagle, right? The Eagle has an absolutely insane tank. It is one of the tankiest tanks that there is, right? It is able to fit a cap booster in one of its mid slots. Like, the default fit that every null block uses includes a cap booster in the mid slot, so that it is not vulnerable to void bombs or such like, right? You can fit an MWD. You can fit, I believe it is like 2 mag subs and lows, like damage mods. And you can also fit 250mm railguns, like the largest size of railguns you can fit, right? And like, the default fit for every null block in the game is like load the tank, a cap booster, all of the biggest guns you can fit for the railguns, and then an MWD and an EDC and loads of damage mods, right? There's there's no concessions you need to make in fitting at all. You just get everything by fitting it the correct way with the obvious fit, right?
And
that should not be the case, like, at all. And I think it would make fights a lot more interesting if, like, you had to choose which concessions to have, and like, oh, we like ship scan them, or we have a spy and they don't have a cap booster. Okay, ping bombers.
Can I finish?
Yeah, go.
One of the changes that we might
soapbox, get the fuck off it.
Yeah. Well, you can chat in a second, right? I just want to finish my point here, right? One of the changes that CCP could make to the Eagle, right? They could reduce the power grid of the ship such that you basically have to choose whether you want to fit all of the tank and all of the big long range guns and MWD, or do you have to pick one basically? Do you downgrade the guns, or do you downgrade the tank, or do you downgrade the MWD to AB? And that's like 3 meaningful things you consider to change, right? Like, for whatever you're going to do. And all you have to do is reduce the power grid of the fucking ship, right?
How does that change? How does that change the meta?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily change the meta, right? But it provides meaningful options whereby you don't have like one single ship class that can just do fucking everything, right?
You have to do that to the rest of the
How many times did you take Eagles into fight and you're like, oh yeah, it's totally fine if I can just like bring ABs, right? It's like a choice,
But if you do that to everything, like it doesn't change. It might change which ship is the dominant ship in the meta, but everything resettles at a point where something's the dominant ship, and everyone complains about, oh my god, Union's online.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think you're right? But I think where we are right now, if you compare hacks broadly, or at least the popular hacks, to everything else in the game, the popular hacks, they kind of are just quite a lot better than everything else. So they probably do need like nerfing in some way, right? But how do you do that in a way that is not just like just blanket like just nerfing damage output or something dumb like that, right?
Yeah. I think there's ways to do, like we talked about this at the start, right? And I think there's ways to do it where you build things, you change things that drive more individual skill. Like I've actually been FCing a little bit of what's it called? New World Online Wars, and it really it's opened my eyes up to how you can actually make combat dynamic, because there's no anchoring up, right? They don't have standardized fits. There's a lot of variation at play, and it's actually a really from my own personal point of view, it's really interesting, right?
Yeah.
And it's because it really comes down to your group's individual player skill that makes it enjoyable, rather than, geez, I hope the FC doesn't get sucked into that bubble at 0 on the fort. Do you know what I mean? That's the only way to salvage EVE at this point, for me personally, is start figuring out how to make it more skill induced than not dumbing it down, but
pilot your own ship instead of listening to the FC say lock this, okay, fine now, lock this, fine now, everyone approach me.
And you could do it in a really incremental, you could either do it in a really incremental way of just going, I think something as simple as going, approach is a singular command, not a constant command, and it has a limit on how often you can push that button. Like things like that start to spread fleets out, and oh shit, I need to pay attention because I've hit my approach button with the FC's turn, so now I need to turn to follow. It spreads the battlefield out. I don't know,
like keep it range and orbit and stuff like that.
Yeah, or it's got some variation in it, right? Like orbit isn't a orbit exactly at this. It's got a whole bunch of random play in the maths or something. Yeah, I don't know. Like that's how you start inducing skill, where your individual skill matters much more than the skill of your FC.
That's pretty much like two approaches to this, right? And like one of the approaches that you can take is extremely simple conservative approach where the game is basically the same. You're just tweaking some numbers on some ships to try and like hopefully make it a bit more air quotes balanced, right? And the second approach, which is pretty much what you are talking about, is you're pretty much making like fundamental changes to how the game works, right?
I don't think it's fundamental. Like
it's pretty big change, right?
It's like huge changes, dude. Well, the stuff specifically that you were talking about is not quite like really going like that far with it, but it's like it's making small changes to like core fundamental mechanics of the game.
And it goes, but I think it's a combination of both, right? I don't think there's any like just changing the numbers again. For how many fucking dev blogs can you go back through where they've tweaked some numbers? Like they either need to move on in the way they balance these things, or just stop doing it. And I think that's what they've done, right? I was going, well, we've tweaked it all for 15 years now, right?
I think that it comes back to the question of, what do you want the outcome of the balance changes to be, right?
Yeah.
I think there's certainly options and outcomes for just fiddling numbers in the game, whereby there's some pretty interesting gameplay with a bunch of different things that interact with each other. Battleships, battlecruisers, tanks, those kind of stuff, right? But it's all going to work in the same way that it does right now. Fundamentally, it's just the numbers will be a bit different, kind of thing, right?
Do you think line members would enjoy flying their own ships more, or do you think maybe they would rather just keep it range 1000 cycle F1?
I think there's a couple of reference points you can look to back when you talk about that, and it's like drone assist Dommy doctrines, right? Like members hated it with a passion. But I think there's still a bit of space to test the water coming back the other way a little bit. It's like maybe some doctrines are a little bit better at that F1 anchor up thing, but the other doctrines, if you've got the skill to fly it, start to shine, right? Like,
I think that kind of already exists a little bit, right? Like there are certain doctrines you can fly which are like much more high skill, like Jam Goose, for example.
Yeah,
like,
and they're not really high skill,
compared to like Munins, they are.
Right? It's effectively like an Ewald doctrine, right? Which is they're pretty much all the same.
But yeah, I agree with you, Mav. But I'm purely from the aspect of wanting to do big fights, and the bigger the fight gets, the less individual skill matters. I think, like when you're down at that 50v50 level, it's a lot more noticeable. But how do you get skill into those? I think you get skill into those big fights, and they suddenly become incredibly entertaining, right? Because it's.
I think that is just fundamentally going to be a difficult problem to solve, right? I mean, even if you look at like, I hate making this analogy, right? But like actual military history in the world, like it's not really ever been a thing. It's been like a huge deal, right? But then also you also are going to run into the same problem, right? Where if your 50 dudes are able to like somehow like have a huge force multiplier that will make like a huge difference in a fight, those force multipliers are going to scale up massively, like all the way up to the entire size of the people who were involved in the fights for the most part, right?
You're thinking about it from the wrong way, right? Like, you've always got those 5 dudes in the fleet who can't fucking anchor up, right? And they're going to die and your fleet spreads out. If you imagine that skill level now bumps up to where 20% of your fleet sucks at anchoring up.
That's just every fleet for me, dude.
Yeah, well, yeah. But
the thing is, there's already room for these like higher skill people in these bigger fleets because there's stuff like force multipliers and boosters and dictators and tackle, right? And like,
I'd like to see more. Like for me personally,
yeah.
I guess I'm thinking about the problem I would try and be designing for, and what I really want is for this game to be more faster, more dynamic. Like they're the 2 key things that I've noticed playing other games since the end of the war while I'm taking a break from EvE, right? Is the game needs to be faster and more dynamic. Like it just goes across the whole breadth of stuff. And how do you make it more dynamic? You increase player skill requirements, like actual player hand-eye coordination skill.
You need to have the ability to make a lot more mistakes than what's currently there, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've said to a bunch of the FCs and tests for a long time, right? Like the mechanical skill required, like if you understand what that term means, the mechanical skill required to be a good FC in EvE is exceptionally low compared to like being good at other games. Like you don't need to be good at clicking buttons and all that shit to like be a good FC at all in EvE. All of the things which make you good are all to do with like your knowledge and experience in decision making.
Yeah, I think like critical thinking and kind of decision making is definitely a huge part in it. Like if you make bad decisions consistently as an FC,
it's not a huge part in it. It's basically all of it, I would say. And maybe there is room that we should have a bit more mechanical skill involved to be good or not, right?
Your ability to read the future is all that matters.
So we have a question in chat for Cryo. Is that the martial or outfit on your character?
It's Cryo here.
Apparently not. Never mind, continue.
All of these issues are like interesting and difficult problems to solve.
That's not difficult. It's easy. Like from a philosophical point of view, it's easy. Maybe the technical's hard, right?
Well, that's kind of actually why these things are difficult to solve, right? It's not because the individual problems are difficult to solve, right? But the issue that is difficult to find is like, what is the actual goal that you are trying to achieve by making these changes, right? And that's where the issues are. There's not like clearly defined end results of where these things should be. Like, what is the identity of a hack? Like, what should a hack be? Like, no one knows.
Well, I think I think that's why I was like looking up at what the problem I'm trying to solve is, and it's making the game more dynamic and faster in the sense of the speed at which the actual game environment, the way the game changes, right? Like, and this just goes to simple shit like, why the fuck are there 3 timers on a Citadel? Like, changes.
We've avoided like chatting about Citadels. I don't really want to.
No, but if you just think about it from that design concept of how long it takes to achieve anything in this game, like that Sov is so hard to turn over that driving ADMs down there's no real viable way to contest driving someone's ADM down realistically, and all these kind of things that draw the game out in this in what's turned into a really conservative landscape for the defender to be sacrosanct.
It certainly didn't always used to be quite as defender-centric as it is now. Certainly, it was like a little bit, but the last like 4 years or so, it's been like the game has become massively like just sit around and farm and just like you have like giga fucking bonuses for defending.
I can't remember. I was talking to someone a little while ago while I was drunk some other time. That maybe regions are different, right? Like maybe in some regions, citadels only have two timers, or Sov can be flipped in a day. Like, so the types of people, if you want to farm and crab safely, there's a couple of safe areas for doing that, right? That it's the defender gets all the advantage, but there's other places where it is high contest and things slip over fast because I don't care about Sov, right? I couldn't care where I live. I just wanted to see big fights and explosions.
I think that's honestly one of the biggest problems with EVE generally is that like it's become so genericized, right? Like everything is the same everywhere, and that's probably one of the big reasons that people don't have things to fight over is because everything is the same everywhere, right?
Once you have wealth, what else do you need?
Even though like R64, passive moon mining R64s used to be a big content driver, and obviously like they're not now. It's like Athels and stuff. But I promise you, right? If you took all of the R64s that we have in a game now, and you like just got rid of like 80% of them, but the ones that were remaining got like 500% yield, so you still have the same. You still have the same income total in the game, right? But it's all like centralized on extremely small amount of extremely profitable moons. Oh look, suddenly everyone's got stuff to fight over.
And you put all the tech in PL space and
yeah. I mean, it's like a dumb idea, right? But as a concept, right? Like that's possibly what we need to be looking towards doing in the game as a whole. Having things to fight over, because like space is just like you said, so homogenized. There's just it's all fucking same. It doesn't matter.
That's part of the problem of making some of the the keys really hard to find and get. The faction super drops really hard to find and get. Like those things would be great conflict drivers if they appeared on your overview, right?
Well, I think the ESS reserve keys they're already pretty good conflict drivers. I think
it's hard.
It is a shame. It is a shame
It's hard to get them. That's the thing, right? Like, just make them.
It is.
I thought it was going to be like Christmas and candy, right? When they released that, and then I got into it, and I was like, "Oh, this is the most painful, blood-sucking exercise I could possibly do if I want to go and have."
Yeah, it's a shame that it's hard to get the keys right, but they could easily make changes that would allow this to be like a thing that generates content all the time, right?
Could have made the game faster and fun and
the
dynamic.
normal main bank you go to in ESS, right? Like the normal main bank you go to in ESS and like click the thing and do your thing. If it just like allowed you to go to the reserve bank as well, except it gives you like a 10-minute spool up time kind of thing, and it still does the same broadcast of like where you are
or something, right?
But you don't even need a key. Like fucking money all over the fucking place, right? Like that create content.
They drive their metric up of look, player base in low sex growing because there's this random thing that some people farm that's awkward to do. I don't know.
Good for them, I suppose. I would like to see low stack become, great like it used to be many, many years back. That I heard from other people that it was great, but I never really saw for myself. But it seems like CCP's tried so many to just throw stuff at low stack and just like hope something works, and like didn't seem like it's really worked.
I really
like. When was the last time CCP kind of did like a big drastic change to like not like indie and stuff, but like everything else
to anything?
A couple of years ago, I think, something like that, 2-3 years.
Like combat or just like how
Pochvin's probably actually pretty recent. Would be what like there's probably on that.
That's about a year ago, Pochvin.
Yeah, like what you've got the
Pochvin's actually really good, dude.
Yeah, it's good.
Like Pochvin, they did a really good job on it.
But if you're talking about big game change, then you probably go back to like the Sov mechanics changing is probably the next big change before that, really.
Yeah, that was probably like 2016, 2017 when it was like the whole like Sov mechanics change plus the capital like revamp at the same time, didn't they? They did all the new capital stuff.
How much time can you spend on new player experience, right?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see them kind of do some kind of rework to make the game a bit more interesting.
Enjoyable would be the word, right?
Yeah. And conflict drivers, I think, is a big one. Like, there's just no reason for people to get into fights apart from, like, politics and, I guess, renting.
I'd love if this game was good.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm trying to say.
God, what is it? Every single fleet probably got like, fuck this game's shit. When the fuck is EVE 2 coming out?
If EVE 2 comes out, then it's going to die in the cradle. The only reason EVE's still going is because of inertia and sunk cost fallacies, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're in space, so that we've been poked, and we're not going to stop until we encounter an opposing force.
Nerd.
Whatever the fuck it is. Every action equal an opposite reaction.
This isn't physics.
We're in space. I mean,
sorry, we're submarines in space.
Yeah, this was originally a submarine simulator.
Wait, what?
Yeah, EVE was originally a submarine simulator game.
What the fuck?
Have you noticed when you stop your ship, it levels out?
There's a horizontal plane, right?
Yeah, everything's got a horizontal plane.
Oh my god!
Have you noticed when you stop your ship, moving upwards, and you hit stop, it stops and then levels out?
Just like Star Trek. we face each other head on.
Yeah. There's an up. There's an up in space.
That was the camera rotating in Star Trek, not the space. Not the ship.
Gimbal locks, right? It's there's no true up in space. It's really just based on our naive, and improper and unreal understanding of 3D space, right?
It's based on our addiction to gravity.
Yeah, but the fact we've all agreed to anchor our keep stars pointing the same up.
Speaking of 3D orientation, I got a point to make about 3D orientation right here. The Ragnarok is pointing the wrong way.
I think it should be pointing the other direction.
The Ragnarok is it needs to be pointing upwards, and I think CCP has made a fundamental mistake. The Ragnarok is pointing sideways. It needs to be pointing up and down, and the Naglfar points up and down. It needs to be pointing sideways.
I believe that question was asked to CCP, Larrikin, and Convict at EVE Down Under. Was when is it going to get the model change? And the answer
what's the answer?
I think it's I think the art team's playing around with it. I can't 100% remember. There was a lot of stuff to
You have just reminded me, right, that I gave you a question to ask to someone at EVE Down Under, and I would like to hear what the answer to that was. I've not heard the answer
to that was the math guy and the forum guy don't have an answer for that because that's not their departments.
All right, allow it.
What was your question?
I'll answer it.
My question was, it was to paraphrase basically, when is there going to be a balance pass for Citadels?
The problem is CCP Larrikin is a statistical analysis guy, so he's the one who does the economic report. That's his love child, and then CCP Convict is a
probably in this sense, he should have actually quite a good understanding of the concept that 98% of fights in the game happen with Citadels, and 98% of people who are involved in those fights do not enjoy them because they're fucking horrible.
And Larrikin was originally a game designer, right? He bought in fighters, I believe, and Rorquals. Anyway.
Well, look, we got the guy who got me into EVE in the Twitch chat and then fucked off and quit playing. Hello, Flux Effect.
I got to bounce pretty soon because the show's getting on. It's getting pretty long.
Yeah, look, 3 hours stream. Usually we finish it 2 hours. I mean, I'm happy to wrap it up. I just left it running because you guys seem to be on a pretty good roll and very invested in what you guys were actually talking about. There was a lot of interaction, so I was just happy to let it go as long as you do.
It has been a good conversation and a good show, and I'm sad that I have to cut it short because I actually have to go and go and socialize with other EVE people and give beers and stuff today. That's what I'm doing.
Is Cryo Australian?
Or... he's Kiwi.
Yeah.
Cryo?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I don't even know what Carmen's doing here, right? There's an Australian map on the screen.
Well, it's like the morning on a Saturday for me. But I'm going to duck out, right? Because it's basically midday now.
Every day is a Saturday morning for you, isn't it?
Well, he needs to plug his CSM application.
Well, that's like the next thing.
I've been doing that every year, and it doesn't work.
Is that not a meme? Are you actually like?
Is it a meme? Is it not a meme? I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Hey, so if you liked the stuff that I was chatting about on the stream today, you should absolutely vote for me on CSM 17, which I believe is going to begin the voting whole processing in May or something.
Don't forget FanFest as well, guys. If you're able to attend, I'm trying to. Don't think I'm going to be able to. Time's getting a bit short, but FanFest is back.
So it was first time in 3 years FanFest on.
Something like that. You know, the world's healing.
I'm going to FanFest. I've never been to a FanFest before, ever. I'm playing this game 16, 17 years. I've never been to FanFest. I'm going to see it. I'm super psyched about it.
Hey, Cryo, there was a question for you. Are you wearing the Martial Orr outfit?
The image that you have in the Twitch chat is the Serpentis jacket, but I've just changed it to the Martial Orr jacket in-game.
Okay. I need to talk to Red Lion and work out how the fuck I'm meant to update these.
Yeah, I just changed it to the Billiness jacket just for the flex.
You got to remind Redline as well that I'm not ever going on his show if I ain't got a portrait. Just not happening.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, where's my Kanye West impersonation portrait?
Yeah, I got to work out how to do them. There's a program you use so you can put them on a green screen, then you run the Chrome. And I'm not that technical. All right, guys. Well, look, I think we're going to wind down here. Show's been going on for nearly 3 hours. Look, I want to thank you guys for coming and watching. I know we didn't really hit on the topics too much, but we did hit a lot of the topics that have been pretty much at the heart of a lot of the issues that NullSec has faced. The fact we've got NC here, Test here, and Goonswarm here in the people, and being able to agree that things were busted. Yes, we used them because they're available, but we agree that they're fucked and busted. So yeah, look, this is Serious Slander Saturday, your premier AUTZ trash talk show and worst possible place to get news from because I'm never fucking prepared for anything. I won't actually...
didn't trash talk very much at all, did we, this week?
I don't know. You were Cryo had it out at the beginning. It was very fun to see, with the Cryo being like, Carmen, shut the fuck up and let me speak.
I like Cryo, he's a good dude.
Yeah, Cryo's great. So Luke's going to be hosting next week's show because I'm going out bush with my swag and compound bow for the week. So I'm not going to be in Civilization. I'll see if I can't somehow hop on if I get enough reception on my phone just to say hi. Yeah, guys. So look, this is the show. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the follows, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys watching every week is what makes me, actually hop off whatever.
It's what gets us on the show, I mean, if the show had 2 viewers, we wouldn't. Most of us really do it. Well, pretty some of us would, but a lot of us we're trying to grow the viewership and do something that's interesting and useful to people in a lot of ways. And if you liked what I was chatting about today, you should definitely vote for me CSM17 in May.
I'm going to vote for Cryer.
If you want someone drunk on CSM, you should vote for me.
I would not vote for CSM because I don't want to have meetings at 4 in the morning.
I've got that covered already, Malachi, dude.
That's the thing that immediately turned me off running for CSM was the fact all their meetings would be at 4 AM my time, and no, fuck that.
There are many, many things that should turn you off about it. It's
as if you turn up to the meetings.
I already don't turn up to meetings for my day job, mate.
Yes.
Right, so don't vote for Malachi. That's basically what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, basically. But look, guys.
I'll take the endorsement.
Thanks for watching. You guys are amazing. I appreciate all the viewers. You're all awesome. The interaction in the chat and everything, asking us questions. I mean, it's the way that we're able to fill 2 hours off. Well, we got to admit, nearly 3 hours off the show because there's not much in EVE going on at the moment. This show was great during the war because there was something big happening every week, and now I'm sitting there with a magnifying glass, being like, okay, what was a good fight? What can I get information on it? Who can I get on to talk? Malachi, Cryo, Carmen, Mav, Captain Serban, and are you guys jumping? Oh no, Sober's over here, and Mini. like, thanks for jumping on and being guests. It saves me sitting here talking to myself for 3 hours, so I really appreciate you guys.
One thing is also like, one thing is also totally worthwhile to kind of like remember as well and kind of point out again. Like all of these people in the chat who are kind of just making comments in the chat, asking questions, stuff like that. There's no gatekeeping to the show at all. Like if you want to like come on voice on the show and just like chat to us and ask those questions like in person, just join the Discord and go to Drag Me, and like we'll drag you in and we can chat in person. Like it's not like segregated in any meaningful way at all. If you want to like be involved, just come along.
I personally am very anti-echo chamber, which is one of the reasons why I got Luke to co-host this with me instead of another test member or someone from Happy. I wanted that kind of that opposing views, just to show that we're completely accepting whatever alliance you're with, whatever coalition you're with, whoever you fly with. Even if you're a high-set ganker, you're welcome on the show.
And there is one thing to remember in this context above all other things, right? When we're discussing about, like people's political alignments and, like which groups are coming on the show, all this kind of stuff, right? It's a fucking video game.
Just follow the golden rules. Don't be a dick and be awesome to each other.
That is not the only thing to remember. The only thing to remember is test is next.
Eventually.
Eventually. All right, guys,
there's an asterisk and about 15 paragraphs.
So January, huh?
End of that.
So January, Crow, huh?
Look, I genuinely have no idea what's going on in January. Like, that's a genuine answer for me. Like, I am that disconnected from the military.
New Year's. The New Year's happens in January, right?
Yes, there's something about January 3rd, but like my response is, why don't we just evade on January 2nd? They'll never expect it. So
please don't assume which cultural calendar we follow, Carmen.
All right, guys.
In New Zealand, we don't celebrate New Year's. It's as illegal as gardening.
I'm very sorry about that, Marco.
Yeah, at least we don't follow the Russian calendar with, what is it, extra 2 months or something?
I follow the Chinese calendar with the majority of our player base.
Right, I've got to fuck off now, shower, and go and get on the train. So I've got like an hour to get to the pub to go and have a bit of a headliner. So see you in a bit.
Alright, guys. Look, thank you very much for watching. Once again, this is Serious Slander Saturday. I've been your host, Kale Eagle's Eye. Thank you to Cryo Huron of Goon Swarm, Carmen Gel of Test, Malachi of NC, Mav of Post This Rat, as well as Captain Soben and Mini when they hopped on. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you next Saturday. Or don't forget to watch Crash Talk Tuesday, which is usually around about 12 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time. So I'll probably be on there. So I'll see you all guys next Tuesday. Fly safe.